I have gone on record saying this many times. So, yes, I, Anderson Marchak, proclaim that The Dark Knight is the greatest superhero movie of all time. Ricardo, how do you feel?
I'll be real with you. Like you said, I've got personal favorites. I've got movies that I
Right.
I, I have a crazy love for. Movies that are my number one, number two. Do people go, really? That's your number one? I'm like, yeah, man, because it does something for me. But in my opinion, and I say it with my chest. I have no fear
There we
whatsoever.
go.
I think The Dark Knight is the greatest comic book film of all time.
Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel.
Well, here we are.
Here we are.
We have been doing our official breakdown of the filmography of Christopher Nolan. We've been going through the
Yeah.
movies one at a time. It's been a pleasure. For
Oh yeah.
those of you that don't know, Christopher Nolan is our favorite director.
Mm.
In Nolan, we trust.
In Nolan, we trust my boy.
Yeah, it's been great. And the next movie that we're going to discuss today is a movie that's pretty special to both of us. It's a movie we've been talking about for many years with one another.
Mhm.
And it was released on July 18th of 2008. We are talking about The Dark Knight.
Good God, man. Good. I mean, we were like, dude, how are we gonna talk about The Dark Knight? Because
Yeah,
it's just there's so much to unpack with that movie in every aspect, whether it's in front of the camera, whether it's behind the camera, things leading up to the movie, the experiences with the actors, Christopher Nolan,
right.
everything involved. And it's just like, bro, I cannot wait. I'm hyped.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give you a little preview of what we have going on today, we're definitely going to break down the movie, but then
Mhm.
we're going to discuss just the cultural impact that The Dark
Yeah.
Knight had on film, on superhero movies, on us
Yeah.
as well, and maybe a little bit of Nolan's legacy, all that good stuff.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's going to be interesting. So, well, let's get started.
Let's get it.
Alrighty. So the opening shot is a scene where we see the Batman logo, and it's engulfed in smoke and fire. Kind of you hear the violins going, a little bit of Hans Zimmer action
Mhm.
with the soundtrack, and we see some masked criminals all wearing clown masks. Well, we saw one from the back from
Mhm.
behind, and we didn't know who that. We kind of had a thing, an inkling of who it was, but it's
Yeah.
not revealed yet. And one by one, we see these folks going through the process of breaking into the vault, securing the bank tellers and such. And each time one person is done with the other, they shoot them. They betray each other one at a time.
Right off the bat, you were like, "Oh, yeah, this is definitely some Joker mentality planning." Because, like
Right,
you mentioned, the first thing they do to get into the building, the guy's like, I'm done here," and the other guy just caps him, and you're
right,
like, "Oh, we already know where we're going. Like, we know
right.
we're gonna get this chain of events that's gonna continue to do this."
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, you had mentioned something to me, and I thought it would be worth saying here that it's almost like a short film
Yeah,
because
the first 7 minutes are like a short film.
right,
It's a heist, it's an introduction of Joker, and if it concluded at the end of this bank heist, I'd be like, "Oh, that's an amazing, excellent short film." Like, there's so much detail that's put into just these few 7 minutes that I'm like, "Man, this what it's just a phenomenal intro to the character."
absolutely. And let's talk about the opening scene a little bit here because it's such an impactful opening scene.
Yes.
Um, we got William Fichtner.
I love William Fichtner, man.
you
Just
know,
just one of the many
yeah,
actors that are in this thing.
yeah, and he's been in quite a few things, but that at the time I was a really big fan of Prison Break on
Mhm.
TV, so it was cool seeing his character there. And we had no idea where the scene was going, but at the very end we get the reveal. I believe that
Yes.
was it doesn't kill you, makes you stranger. One of the many
Makes you
iconic
stranger.
one of the iconic lines we'll hear throughout the entire movie. And
Mhm.
he shows himself. The first time I saw this, and I saw the grenade get placed into his mouth,
Mhm.
and it got pulled, and Joker drives away in the bus. Um, I didn't understand what was going on, and I had to go back.
Same.
It was just like, what is this about? And after many viewings, it's just Joker being Joker. That was never meant to explode. He was just
Yeah,
it was just like, haha, I fooled you. You thought that was gonna explode. It's just a bunch of smoke.
it was because I too was like, wait, did that kill him? Was
Right.
it a dud? Was it not supposed to happen? And then just screen smoke, and he just kind of goes, oh, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like he's shot in the side a little bit, and he puts it in his mouth and he leaves. I'm like, is it a flashbang? Like what is it? And you're not even
Well,
entirely sure because Joker is he's unpredictable. So
right.
you're like, was this part of a gag? Was it this? Was it that? And the fact that Fichtner's character was pretty BA because he pulls a shotgun out, a sawed-off shotgun,
Yeah, it's pretty
because
cool.
Joker's going after mob money,
Correct.
which is pretty crazy. Um, LOL, no pun intended. But so when he has that moment and everyone's taking each other out and whatnot, and you also get to see how orchestrated Joker can be at planning. Like this entire set,
Yes.
everything it seems chaotic, but everything seems to be going according to plan. One of my favorite aspects of that is when one of the goons doesn't realize he's talking to Joker, and he goes, "Oh, I bet you Joker told you to kill me after we got the money." He goes, "No, no, 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 I killed the bus driver."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Bus driver," and you're just waiting, and a bus comes driving through the wall, and like it shows just impeccable planning from the Joker that had everything down to a T like that. And then you get the whole reveal. You see the face, what doesn't kill you makes you stranger, and he just
Right.
takes off. And I'm like, oh, this whole thing was excellent.
Yeah, how about that transition to the buses? Real clean. As he's driving the
Clean.
bus out, he just merges with the other buses, and you see like the dust from the
Yes.
concrete coming off the top of the bus as the police are coming in. And obviously, it serves a purpose because the Joker needs money to do the
Yeah.
things that he needs to do. But this is how he got it. Right in the beginning
Yep.
of the movie. It's what an amazing opening scene, though. Like
It's
very iconic.
Yeah, like Nolan does really well with intros, especially in the Dark Knight trilogy. Like
Right.
his intros are very significant and they stand out. And again, this was just on surface level, it's just a bank heist, right? It's just a bank heist on surface level. But if you look beneath, again, he's taking money from probably the most powerful organization within
Right.
Gotham, which is the mob. Like he's going right for the mob money. Not only that, his planning is on point, his timing is spectacular.
Right.
And just as you mentioned, just in the end alone, just in the bus peeling out and going right into the line of buses, it's so well thought out that instinctively you're like, hey, we're supposed to envision Joker as a crazy person, but he's
Correct.
really good at what he does.
Right.
And I thought that was explained really well just in this first few minutes. This first few minutes, you're like, okay, okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we then transition to we see criminals doing their thing at nighttime, and they're seeing the bat signal. Oh no, not tonight. Like, so you can
Yeah,
already
yeah.
see, like, he's been Batman for a little bit now, and people are scared. Um, we see the Scarecrow make a reappearance here, Killian
Hmm.
Murphy, and with the Chechin, and I told you my drugs would take you places. I didn't say you would like them.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, so he's selling the fear toxin as some form of drugs, and Batman, he foils everything that's going on here, with the
Yeah.
goons, and I just wanted to mention here, Murphy just with just comedic time, because the police, they've started dressing up like Batman to
It's
kind of,
you yeah,
yeah,
you have some random like vigilante
yeah,
copycats.
yeah, yeah.
And they're in like and it's so funny because I remember watching it for the first time in theaters. And again, he's very good at what he does. We know this already. But
Absolutely,
you see a Batman figure in the shadows.
right,
And as a viewer, you can pick up something's off. And it's the shaping and the outline, like something feels off, but you're not entirely sure. You almost feel the same way that the criminals feel. You're like, that's not bad. Is that Batman? That's not Batman.
right,
And then you hear gunfire and you're like, wait a minute. And Scarecrow's like, that's not him. And he's got like these vigilante like copycats that are
Right.
inspired by the Batman.
Right. And he says that's not him, and then the tumbler comes crashing through a wall. Oh, that's more like it.
That's listen. We said it before. We said it before. Nolan has really good
Yeah,
humor. He does, and he goes, "That's more like it." And I love that the tumbler just happens coming at that time, and it says intimidate, and it does certain things and whatnot, and this and threaten and whatnot. And it's just again, his humor is really good. It's not cheesy or in your face or anything, but it's just and Cillian Murphy delivers it so well.
absolutely. To wrap up the scene. Oh, by the way, um, great moment where Batman jumps off from high above and he lands on top of the van and to like crash in the roof of the van to actually stop Scarecrow from driving away. And everybody's tied up, but it's so funny because the police are tied up too, because he's a
Everybody's tied
vigilante.
up.
He doesn't
Everybody's
wanna
tied up.
yeah, he doesn't wanna get caught because he's a vigilante, so he ties up the police dressed as Batman along with them, and, you know, the policeman's, like, saying, "What gives you the right? What's the difference between, you and us?" And he's like, "I'm not wearing hockey pads," you know?
It's so good, and it's authentic. Again, it's a good joke. It's authentic. I'm not wearing any hockey pads. And like another thing I really like about this scene in particular, and there's a reason for it. And as the movie goes on, we'll talk about it. But I love that they were showing somewhat of a difficult time that Bruce was having in the original suit, like even with his movements and
Right,
whatnot, and he felt slower, and he was having a hard time being as agile and as quick in the suit because, as you know, he can't turn his neck. So
right.
he's dealing with some dogs, my dogs are hungry. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? He's
yeah.
dealing with the dogs. He's dealing with that, and he's getting pretty banged up. And I like that they showed that. Because the last time we saw Batman, like obviously he's cleaning house, but for whatever reason, right now, there's something that's making a difference in his body language and everything that's happening in the scene. And as the movie goes on, we understand why they're telling that part of the story. And I just thought it was cool that they showcased that as well. But you know, he dipped out with a good joke, man. I'm not wearing any hockey pads, and no, he is not.
Yeah. Um, Unfortunately, just with what Christian Bale is doing with his voice, it doesn't come through too clearly. So for the longest time, we thought he was saying hockey pants.
Hockey.
That's what I.
he
It sounded like
he
pants, but it's pads. So
Christian Bale, and a lot of people don't realize this because people, when they quote Batman Begins, they put a really heavy voice, but in Begins it was softer, not
right,
soft, but it was very much you rattled the cage,
right,
and in this one it's very aggressive, and I don't I
full
don't
on.
know if that was a decision between him and Nolan, or if he felt he needed to disguise his voice more, be more intimidating. But in The Dark Knight, it is very aggressive. I'm not worried. Like it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
heavy,
Yeah,
very heavy.
a lot of people hate Bale as Batman because of that. you
Yeah,
know,
like
so they love the
it
movies,
became
right?
yeah,
They love the movies, but they're like, I don't like the voice. So
yeah, they were like,
um,
"Oh, he went so hard," and I was like, "Oh,
my
I'm okay.
guess is
I'm okay."
maybe he's going a little more aggressive as
Mhm.
Batman. He spent more years, so now he's gonna be more aggressive as Batman, and that's why he wants to use that voice a little bit more. That's just my
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
So I told you to take some notes about the first 15 minutes of the movie.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just gonna go through my notes here. A lot happens in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
We meet the Joker. We get that
Yes.
incredible, unforgettable bank heist. We get to see the Scarecrow. We get to meet the Chechin. We get to see the bat signal being used, actually. Uh, we see the new relationship between Gordon and Batman. They're talking to each other and working together. We see the new base of operations because Wayne Manor burned down and Batman Begins. So we see this new base of operations between Bruce and Alfred. We get to meet Salvador Maroni in the courtroom, played by Eric Roberts. And
Yes.
he's the new head of the Falcone family. He's on trial here. And over the course of that hearing, we get to see Rachel now, who's been
Mhm.
recasted, played by Maggie Gyllenhaal, was
Yep.
Katie Holmes. Now it's Maggie Gyllenhaal, and we get to meet her new boyfriend, Harvey Dent, played by Aaron Eckhart. And Dent almost gets killed because the
Yeah.
person on the stand says, "I'm the guy." Like it's not Maroney, it's me. He was just the fall guy. And we get this great scene here. I suggest if you're gonna use a gun next time, buy American. So,
Yeah, because it's almost like one of those. oh god, I forget the material, the carbon fiber. It's a
Yeah,
carbon fiber gun, and he goes, carbon fiber made in China. He goes, hey, next time you want to kill someone, you tell them to buy American. And it's so and there's a great line after this because the judge, asked for a recess. And Harvey goes, but your honor, I'm not done. Like without a beat, like
right,
his life was threatened, and he's like, I'm not done. Like he took him out with a single hit, and he's like, let's keep the questioning going because again, they had a written statement. They had
right,
a written statement from this guy, exactly who was running things, and he wanted to make a mockery of the court. And yeah, I'm the
right,
guy. Maroney, he's a fall guy. Come on, it's me.
yeah. So that's just in the first 15 minutes.
There's
We
a
just
lot
get
in the first 15
introduced to a
minutes.
lot of characters, a lot of things going on now. We're seeing this version of Batman that's grown a little bit since Batman
Mhm.
Begins. So, anything you picked up on that from the first 15 minutes besides the heist is probably the most memorable thing, but
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple things that I really enjoyed about the first 15 minutes. Obviously, you have the heist, and the heist is great. I also love seeing what you brought up, the working relationship between Gordon and Batman.
right,
At the very end of Batman Begins, you kind of start to see that begin. He gives him the card, he goes, "Hey," but this time, like they're meeting up at the crime scenes, they're discussing, they're talking. And one thing that I appreciated about that moment was it was showing how Batman was, he even says the line, he goes, one man versus the entire mob. The Joker can wait. He is underestimating the Joker. He doesn't know the Joker. And I thought that was a really cool sequence because I was like, oh, that means as the movie goes on, he's
right,
gonna realize just how powerful and how bad the Joker can be. But he's so invested in like, oh, we have to go after the mob. The mob, they control everything. They got people in the police department and whatnot. The Joker can wait. And little does he know that the Joker is going to be a really significant thorn in his side. So I appreciate that in the first 15 minutes. It's almost like he's not downplaying the Joker, but he's just like, he can wait. And I love that aspect of the first 15 minutes of being like, oh, you're going to be in for it. You're going to be
right,
in for it.
right. Okay,
I love the and this theme is explored in all three movies. But the idea of Batman inspiring, they talk about it in Batman Begins. If I can be a symbol, I can be something more. And in this movie, he's inspiring, but he's not inspiring in the way that he had envisioned.
right,
And even him and Alfred make a joke about it and whatnot. But I appreciated that because it showed that Batman is going out there and he's putting on the cow and he's fighting crime and whatnot, and he is inspiring, but maybe not in the way that would be best appropriate. Like he's seeking a different way of doing justice. He doesn't want everybody on the street doing what he's doing because they obviously don't have the resources. So I appreciated that for the first 15 minutes as well. And then obviously, come on, I believe in Harvey Dent. The introduction of Harvey Dent in the first
right,
15 minutes in that court scene alone
right,
showed us exactly who Harvey is. And from that moment, I was like, ooh, I can't wait to see where we go with this guy in this movie.
right. And for us comic book aficionados, let's get a little sweaty here. We're going to be getting
Yeah.
very sweaty for this episode to let
Yeah.
you folks
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um, we know that this is the man that becomes Two-Face one day,
Mhm.
and you know, if the first time you're watching this movie is somebody that knows that, you don't know if that's gonna happen or not. You
I was
just
not
know
sure.
you just knew that Harvey Dent was in the movie, and, we don't know what's gonna happen next, So, I thought that was interesting too, but like I said, a lot happens in the first 15 minutes of the movie, and that theme of a lot happening continues with the pacing that we'll get to
Yes.
as the
Yes.
movie continues, so
There's a lot of intertwining character stories
right,
that in the first 15 minutes, like you have a Joker arc in the first 15 minutes, you have Batman, you have Rachel, and you have Harvey. Like
right.
they're deliberately setting up multiple stories that are gonna crash throughout this movie.
Right, exactly. And I'm glad you brought up that meeting with Gordon where Batman says one guy versus the mob, talking about the Joker, because
Mhm.
Ramirez is there, who ends up being a character we look at a little bit later on. And then he
Yep.
just looks at him and looks at her and goes, oh, just give us a minute,
Yeah.
because he knows what he's doing with Batman is wrong. They don't like the fact that he's working with Batman,
No, no, they do
so,
not.
you know, well, there's a reason why is because all the police are corrupt. They don't know who to trust.
Dude,
Most
dude,
of the police are corrupt.
there's so many corrupt police in this thing. It's
Right,
insane.
right, and let's be fair, that's because the mob is controlling things. These
Yep.
people aren't
Yep.
doing it on their own, it's the mob, so
No, and as we go through this movie, you'll see what motivates these people on doing what they're doing, and you're kind of like, oh, I understand. I understand.
Right. We got our first meeting between Dent and Gordon,
Mm-hmm.
and Gordon, he's heading up the MCU, haha, the MCU, and they're having issues with each other because um, he's saying that he doesn't want to go alone when he's doing these things, and well, it was a situation of I want to have my guys, and then Dent is saying, "Well, I don't trust your guys."
Yep.
I investigated, X amount of people, and he's saying, if I were to go with people that you didn't investigate, then I ended up going alone because you investigated
Yep.
everybody when you were at Eternal Affairs,
Yep.
you know. So they're clashing a little bit here,
Yeah.
um, and this theme of Harvey has now become the White Knight
The White Knight.
of
Yes.
Gotham, his first introduced because he's getting criminals off the street as as the DA because he's doing what they couldn't do.
Yeah.
And we get a little tease at the end of the scene. He said, you guys have a little nickname for me down there. Do you remember what that was?
No, 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 and
No,
yet,
no.
and again, and again, to go back to your point, we don't know what's going to happen with his character in this movie. I remember even the advertisements. They had Harvey posters, and he had the I believe in Harvey Dent pin, and it was covering half of his face, and you were like, oh, they're foreshadowing. Will something happen in this movie? Is it a take on his character? We'll see. Who
Right.
knows? Also, I forgot to mention from the court scene, the introduction of the coin, Harvey's coin. And I
Yes.
and I love the introduction of
Yeah.
the coin
Flip before.
because
Let me get him first. Yeah.
and she's like, "Oh, you would put you would put your opportunity up based on luck," and he goes, "I make my own luck." You know what I mean? And you're not really sure what you get from that just yet, but I do love that we brought the coin in.
Yeah. And by the way, the MCU is the Major Crimes Unit, and
Yes.
that's what Gordon is heading up. He's separate from the rest of the police department. So you just pick things up, like they been saying MCU for all these years and never really put two and two together, that oh haha,
Yeah.
we're referencing the Marvel Cinematic Universe, folks, for those of you
The
that
major
don't.
crime unit, the
Yeah.
MCU.
So now we have this dinner scene, and we get a reintroduction to the mask of Bruce Wayne, the
I
billionaire
love it.
playboy,
I
and it
love
is
it.
full on now. We get a little taste of
Yes.
it in Begins, but now the mask of Bruce Wayne is really coming forward. This is the first face-to-face meeting between Bruce and Harvey, and
This felt like an unofficial interview. It
right,
felt like Bruce was interviewing Harvey and Harvey had no idea.
right,
Cuz like you said, the playboy persona's coming through, but he's testing Harvey. Like he's listening to his answers. And I just thought this whole sequence, I'm watching Bruce, and Bruce is doing and Bale is doing amazing acting with his eyes because again, he's playing this douchey character, but you see moments where he's legitimately like just studying Harvey's responses. And I was like, ooh, this is such a good scene.
yeah, and it's really cool because before we're getting a little hint of how Bruce feels about this man because he's
Mhm.
going out with his childhood best friend and the love of his life,
Yep.
and it's already been established they can't be together because he's Batman.
Yeah.
And like there's a little scene earlier, Alfred's seeing him watch the news, but Harvey's on the news all the time, obviously. And who Rachel spends her time with is her business. It's
Yeah.
like he's trying to hide the fact that he's bothered by it, obviously.
Yep. He goes,
So
"Are you more concerned with the man or the woman the man's seeing?" And he goes, "Oh,
right.
what Rachel does with her
Yeah.
free time is her business."
So we get some more comedy here. And Bruce is just taking jabs at him the whole time while they're
Oh yeah.
having, you know, it's it's like, oh well, Harvey's taking me. He came with the head ballerina,
Mhm.
and oh, Harvey's going to take me to the ballet show. And he's like, oh, so you're into ballet, Harvey?
Oh, you like ballet. Like
Yeah,
it's such a condescending question. Oh,
right,
you like ballet? Like it's just like
right.
he's
It's like,
test
oh,
it's so
oh,
funny.
and then he's giving it back to him too. He's, hey, Bruce. Well, Rachel's told me everything about you. Well, I certainly
So
hope not
hopefully I'm
everything.
not. Dude, again, the lines and the jokes, especially from Bruce, and from Alfred, like moments like that are so good. Where he's like,
Yeah,
"Well, most certainly hope not," and it's so good.
it's good stuff. We have a little callback to the hotel scene in Batman Begins because he says, let's put some tables together. And Harvey's like, oh, no, they're not going to let us. He's like, they should. I own the place,
I
you
own
know?
the place. You know what I mean? Like
So,
again, like and we've talked about it. It's one of the best dynamics about Batman as a character is that mask of Bruce Wayne. And this scene, I was so happy when we got it because we get to see it again. And like you said, it's really on now. Like
right,
he's perfected it in a sense, like, oh, I've got the douchiest Bruce Wayne here. And they're at the table and they're even arguing about Batman. Like Harvey's like, oh, I think it's great that a citizen is standing up. And Bruce Wayne is just like, oh, come on. Really,
right,
a guy dressed up like a bat, he can't all be there. Like I
right.
love that aspect of the dual identity fighting among the table.
Yeah. And it's great when we start talking about Batman and we start talking about what's good for the city.
Mhm.
Harvey would go on to drop one of the most iconic lines. He says, "You either
Yes.
die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain." And Harvey goes into detail saying that Batman probably doesn't want to do this for the rest of his life. Someone needs to take up the mantle. And
Mhm.
the dancer, she says, "Oh, is that someone you? What if Harvey Dent is the Batman?" And well, first of all, he says, "Well, maybe if I'm up for it to take up the mantle."
Yeah.
And then she says, "Well, maybe you're Batman." And he's like, "No, I'm not. Somebody would notice if I wasn't coming home at night."
Yep.
Just
Yep.
further just driving the knife into the side of Bruce as he's sitting there. And
Yep.
but that was a little bit of foreshadowing there where somebody
It
asks him if he's
was.
Batman. So
It was.
we come back
She
to
even
that.
ho she even holds up, I think it's I don't remember if it's a napkin or a card of some kind to
It's
block
hard.
out his face, and she's
Yeah.
just like, "Oh," and I love and he holds her hand when he says it. I love it. He holds her hand, and goes, "No, someone would notice if I was sneaking out at
Yeah, it's
night."
good.
And I was like, "Ooh," and Bruce is right there like,
Yeah, a lot
mm."
happens at this dinner scene. Um, this is where we start talking even more about the theme of Bruce being able to give up Batman.
Yeah.
And it's explored. It starts being explored at the end of Batman Begins, and then we continue talking about it here. And then obviously once in the Dark Knight, and then we'll talk about it more once we get to Rises. But it's almost as if Nolan's already letting us know that his version of Batman can't be Batman forever.
No, of
And
course not.
no pun intended to the name
Yeah.
of that movie. Um, and as I said, this scene does show Bruce fully owning the billionaire playboy persona, the mask of Bruce Wayne, just full
Mhm.
effect. It's great. So as Bruce Wayne, he does support Dent publicly, but the thing is he's thinking that he wants Harvey to succeed because if Harvey becomes the new savior of Gotham, then he can retire as Batman and then
Yep.
finally be together with Rachel. So it's two things. He's not being completely selfish. He does want the best for Gotham, but he also wants to be with Rachel, even if it means breaking Harvey's heart.
Yeah, because
So,
at the end of the day, Batman is a vigilante. He's a criminal. He's acting above the law, and he really appreciates the fact that Harvey is legitimately a man of the law who doesn't have to hide behind a mask and do all these amazing things. And he quote unquote, he believes in Harvey Dent. He sees the White Knight. He
right.
sees the guy that can do amazing things. And at the same time, he's like, hey, like he could do amazing things for the city. And if that allows me to not have to wear the cowl anymore, that would allow Rachel and myself to recontinue our relationship. So yeah, it's not 100% the motivation, but it's a certain aspect of it.
So we get the very first meeting of the mafia bosses. They're getting together to discuss how they're going to move forward now that the Joker stole from them.
Hmm.
And they need to take care of Joker, the police themselves, and Batman. Lau, who's their accountant, remotely from a TV, tells them that he moved the money and that he's on the way to Hong Kong because the Chinese will not extradite one of their own.
Yeah.
And the Joker interrupts the meeting.
Good God, what a
He
scene.
yeah, he offers to kill Batman for half of everything. And in the background, Gambol says, "You're crazy." And Joker says, "No, I'm not." And he repeats it. No, I'm
No,
not.
I'm not.
It's a
And
great
it's almost, I remember watching this in the theater, and I remember up to this point, he's got a lot of theatrics, right?
right,
How about a magic trick? Like, he's very over the top. He's doing
right,
his thing. And he goes, he wants to have this meeting. He goes, what happened? Your balls drop off. And he's doing this whole thing. But in that moment, when someone called him crazy, it was almost like a trigger because, like, he immediately just stops in place and he's like, no, I'm not. And he kind of just looks over and he's like, no, I'm not. And it's very like, take me serious.
right.
That word by Gambol, I think it was Gambol that said
It
it.
was
Uh,
Gambol. Michael Jai
Michael Jai
White.
White, Michael Jai White, and he says
Yeah.
it, and it's funny because earlier he called him a freak, and
Yes.
even that he kind of took it. He goes a freak, and he goes a guy like, listen, I know why, and he stays on it. But when he called him crazy, that bothered him, and I thought
Right.
that was a very interesting choice to have within that scene. But that whole scene, dude, like, forget
It's
about it,
just wild, like they're
forget about it.
talking and you hear ha 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 ha, and I thought my jokes were bad and we get the magic trick. We get Gamble threatening him. Like um Joker and then to get out of there, Joker has all the grenades,
Hmm.
attached to himself and he's like, "Well, here's my card." He leaves a Joker card, just LOL, just something funny. Um he points to Lau. He says, "I know Squealer." And that's a squealer.
Yeah, and
So,
he's right because he brings up
yeah,
the fact, he goes, Batman has no jurisdiction. He'll find him and he'll make him squeal. And he's like, and I know a squealer, and that
right.
right there, like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? And one of my favorite lines of it too. And I remember the theater, like, people erupted with laughter,
yeah.
is when Gamble goes, "You think you could just steal from us and walk away?" And he goes, "Yeah." Like, it's the funniest, it's the funniest, like, F you, because
Right,
he's just like, "Yeah, I could do that. I could do that." And it's just, I don't know. It shows you how ballsy he is as a character,
right,
and how in control he is. He just walked into the room of the guys whose money he's stolen, and he doesn't have a care in the world. Like, it
right,
just shows you, like, how in control he is. And again, he brought it like, oh, we got to kill the Batman. He wants half. Like,
right.
it's very interesting.
And, Gamble puts a hit out on the Joker. He
Yep.
says, 500,000 dead, a million alive, so
A
I can
million
teach him some
alive.
manners first. So,
Yep.
that we will come back to that.
Oh yeah.
We shift to a scene on the rooftop, and it's Gordon and Harvey blaming each other because the mob got tipped off, which caused Lau to end up moving the money. And it's at this point that Batman, Harvey Dent, and Lieutenant Gordon, he's still lieutenant at this point, they decide that they need to go against the mob. That the only way
Yeah.
they're going to stop all this stuff from happening is that the mob needs to get taken down. This scene is important because it's where we get the reveal that Dent is working with Gordon and Batman.
Yes.
Early on, it Dent is talking to Gordon, and it's like, well, the police have orders to arrest Batman, the vigilante Batman, on site. And
Hmm.
Dent is like, okay, good. But so we're thinking, oh, he's against Batman too. It's like, no, it's all a charade because he knows that Batman is good and he's not okay with him being a vigilante, but he's doing some good that these corrupt police are not.
Yeah, because and one of the things that Harvey's taking into consideration, as well as Gordon, is that even he is a vigilante, which means that he can make certain decisions outside of the law, where they're public figures. Like, he's
Right.
DA, he's a lieutenant. Like, if they go above the law and get caught, that's the end of their careers. Things would go backwards. But Batman already acts above the law. So the idea, and even within the scene, Harvey's like, if you, no, it's actually, I'm sorry, it's actually Batman. It goes, if I get him, can you get him to talk? And Harvey's like, I can get him to sing. And it's that partnership right there,
Yeah.
that they're all acknowledging that Batman is gonna go, across, he's gonna go across the planet, out of the jurisdiction, and he's basically gonna go make the arrest himself and bring him back to the United
Yeah.
States. And they all made that agreement right there. And like you said, it kind of points at the fact that they're all three of them are working together.
We shift to Lucius and Bruce speaking with one another, and Bruce wants better armor for Batman
Yeah.
because he got attacked by the dogs and it hurt him. And um, Lucius is just joking with him, and he's asking, you know, why do you need this? It's just like, I just need it. Well, will the armor help against dogs? And he drops the line. He says, well, you'd be okay against the cats.
I guess against
So
cats. Do good against
so
cats.
nice little wink to Catwoman, which we don't
It
know.
was
We don't know if she'll ever show up.
yeah, yeah, like, it's a nice again, it's a nice little nod. You never really know if it's meant to tease something coming or if it's just a nod,
Right.
and it worked either way, and, probably the most significant change to the suit, which we've never seen, which I was like, "Wow, I can't believe it took this long to finally have it," was the idea that he could turn his neck in the cowl. And he goes, "Oh, you wanna be able to turn your head." And Bruce says it'd make pulling out of the driveway a lot easier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it just and I was like, "Wow," like, in the amount of years that we've had Batman in live action, we've never been able to see a Batman with a cowl that can rotate his neck. And again, it's just
Correct.
another evolution of the thing that Nolan has brought to the character. And with the armor has always been excellent. But again, he's always upping and evolving the character's arsenal. And I thought something as small as that we take for granted was such a significant change in his suit. And then when you see it, you're like, that's incredible. Like, how have we not done this before? But it was great.
So they need an alibi so that Batman can go after Lau on the plane, because Bruce can't just disappear
Nope.
and just go away. So Bruce takes the entire Russian ballet on a cruise, inadvertently or purposely ruining the date that Harvey and Rachel had.
It's so funny.
It's posting, the newspaper article, "Billionaire absconds with entire Russian ballet. All Rachel can do is laugh." Because
It's so
she
funny
knows what he's
because
doing. Yeah.
yes, it's so funny because, like, they didn't even get a warning. You see them
No.
arrive to the show. So, like, this was very last minute, and they just arrived to the show, and it's just like you can see it on her face and expression. She just kinda just like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's like it's a great cover. It's a great cover, but like you said, it's almost intentional that he goes, "I need an alibi." Oh, you know what? They brought up the ballet the other day. I was on a date with one of the ballet dancers. I'll just take them all. That's perfectly fine.
Exactly. I I just and then the logical person in me is thinking, how did he get away with this? Like, did he pay off the theater?
Dude,
Like,
so much money.
yeah, did he pay off the theater? Because the patrons are gonna want their money back. So is that
Yeah.
what he did? Did he? I mean, he has the money to do it. Pay all the dancers
Mhm,
for their performance, pay off the theater, and pay back the
mhm.
patrons. So
Yup,
maybe he did that.
yup. I was like, "Man, he's loaded. He could do it."
We now get the scene with Gambol, where
Oh.
the body of Joker is brought in by some goons,
Mhm,
and covered in trash bags. Like, oh, dead. That's 500. Joker jumps up with the knife, puts it in Gamble's mouth. How about alive? And the scene happens very quickly. He's quick to stab the goons on either side of him, and then put the knife in Gamble's mouth. And then his guys were able to get Gamble's guys,
mhm.
to get with guns and such. It's the first time we hear, you want to know how I got these scars. The story. He talks about his father being a drinker and a fiend. Um, talks about him putting the knife in Joker's mouth as a boy, and he drops the line, "Why so serious?" Another iconic line. We get a great reaction of one of Gamble's crew members watching as this is happening,
Yes.
and as Joker puts the knife in Gamble's mouth, and he says, "Why so serious?" for the last time, and he looks at him, he says, "Why so serious?" And you don't see the swipe. You
Nope.
see the guy on the ground cringe, and you hear the soundtrack, and then Gamble falls to the floor.
Yup.
Um, we don't know this until later on. This scene is framed the way it is, so Nolan doesn't get a rated R rating.
It
There's
was
there's
it
there's
wa
no right, there's no blood, and
no.
you don't see the knife go through his
Nope.
mouth, you know?
I appreciate scenes like this because we've talked about this a lot of times. Less is more, and it's
Right.
about what you don't see that can be really uncomfortable. And I thought it was a great choice to have one of the goons' reactions tell the story, and using the musical cue
Right.
to tell the story. Because you see him, he's got the knife up to Gamble. That's it. That's all you see, and you see him look, and he goes, "Why so serious?" and you hear it and you see his reaction and you know that whatever he saw was bad, which is very, very, very bad.
Right.
And then Gambol falls to the ground. But I love creative decisions like that because it's like you said, it helps you get away from that R rating because it's really violent. Like it's really violent, and it can be insinuated, whatever you want to think he did with that knife, whether it was throw, whether it's up to the viewer to decide. But it can be very, very, very aggressive and brutal. And I thought that was a great decision by Nolan. I love stuff like that. That stuff
Yeah.
was great. And I also, in that scene when he tells the story, the first time we're watching it, I remember thinking, oh wow, or like he's telling us his origin pretty much. Like, oh, that's interesting. As the movie continues,
Right.
we get a little play with that story. But the first time I watched, I was like, oh, is that what happened? Oh, interesting. And then later it's like, oh, wait a minute. But for right now, I thought it was very interesting that he was telling us, how he got those scars.
Right. I think Michael Jai White said that the scene was longer and they had to cut it down, or there might have been a shot that actually showed him cutting him, something like
Mhm.
that, because it was kind of explained, because obviously a cut to the mouth, that's not going to kill you,
Yeah.
so me, just suspension of disbelief, maybe he passed out from the pain
Mhm.
after he cut his mouth open, or I don't know, maybe he did an extra stab or something, all,
Yeah,
it's
they definitely could have got extra coverage. Like, for example, I can imagine them shooting where he's holding it here, and then perhaps just brings it lower, and they're just like, "All right, we can't show that." Like, I wouldn't
right,
be surprised if they got quite a bit of coverage and different angles, and they were just like, you know what? Let's just not show it." And then you just see, Gamble's body just kind of go limp and fall,
right,
and
right.
and that was enough. They're like, "All right, we got it. That's
Yeah.
enough."
So Bruce goes to Lucius to get some help because he needs to find Lau,
Mhm.
and he locates him in Hong Kong, and we get another nice scene of him using the plane, because he needs to, from a plane, he using all these gadgets to break into the building, using a sonar from the cell phone. It's just really cool.
The sonar is great, man, because
Yeah,
it kinda we'll see it more later, but it
right.
reminded me so much of the Arkham games when I was rewatching the movie, the
Yeah,
sonar technology, and I thought it was so cool the way they were able to get it into the building, leave it there and whatnot, and you had the conversation with Lucius and Lau, and Mr. Wayne didn't want you to think we were intentionally wasting your time, just
yeah,
accidentally. And
yeah,
it's such a
yeah,
good it's such a good line. Like that whole sequence is really cool. But then, like you said, we get to the portion of Bruce where he's in the bat suit and he's getting ready. And the way Nolan just films these scenes, man, like there's a real appreciation for atmosphere and scope because from the plane to the God only knows what building it was, but the sheer height, and they're really up there. And again, that's another thing I love about it is that the authenticity of these scenes, where a lot of studios might be like, hey, let's just green screen this, let's just build like a small scaffold or a building and what, but like no, like you see behind the scenes and they're up there, like they're up there
right,
filming, and it just adds to that depth. So I remember watching this in theater and even watching this recently before us to discuss it. And I'm like, this is shot so beautifully. It's just so good that I'm in awe, just not in the sheer fact that Bruce as Batman is about to break into this building, but just the idea of them shooting this entire sequence. And I'm like, man, this whole chef's kiss.
yeah. It's a great scene. He ends up apprehending Lau, bringing him back to the States, and Harvey and Rachel, they're questioning him because now it's like, we got you,
Yeah.
you know, and it's finally he gets a deal, and then he starts mentioning some information here, and he drops a line. He says, "I'm very good with calculations, so
Yeah.
let's get sweaty." Perhaps this is a shout out to the Calculator, another
Could be.
DC Comics character. We don't
Could
know,
be. Yeah.
So we get some information here about a RICO case. Um, I found it funny because these are police, or people in the justice system rather,
Mhm.
explaining a RICO case to one another. But this was just an exposition for us, the audience, so we knew what
Yes,
a
it
RICO
was
case.
yes,
Yeah,
it was for us. As soon as they
like
were like,
Gordon goes,
if you
"RICO?" I'm like, "Of course,
yeah,
the Gordon's a
yes.
lieutenant. He knows what a RICO is."
Yes, he's like, if you could charge one with conspiracy, you can charge all of them with conspiracy, and it was just like, oh, that's great. And in reality, again, it's for us, the audience.
Right. So everyone gets arrested. I wrote it down, 549 criminals at once. The
It's
mayor has a heart attack
it's
over
so
this.
funny. It's so
Um,
funny.
we got a little foreshadowing here. We see Judge. She sees like the Joker card as she's
Mhm.
going through the files. Um, but while Dent rather is having a discussion with the mayor, we get that jump scare of the policeman
Bro,
dressed as Batman in the makeup hit the side of the building.
with a noose, like,
Yeah,
it is it's a very scary jump scare. I remember in the theater, that one shook
yeah,
everybody. That one kinda was like, "Oh my god," because it comes out of left field, and just the imagery of it. Again, like, Nolan does a decent job of pushing his PG-13s when he needs to, and it doesn't go any further, but it's a horrific image of this individual just hanging, and he's got the paint makeup on the mouth, and he's got the bat cowl on and everything else, and it's just like, "Oh, good god," like, it's so startling when it happens.
absolutely. Then we get the video of the Joker torturing him. Um, we see he has one half of the Glasgow smile, so it's
Mhm.
kind of like maybe this is the thing Joker does since he has those marks. He does that to other people as he's torturing them. Um, we get the declaration that Batman must take off his mask and turn himself in, and if he doesn't, people will die. Starting tonight, I'm a man of my word,
I'm
and
a man of my word.
yeah, it's great.
To my knowledge to my knowledge, that interrogation scene with Heath Ledger and the individual that he's, he's pretty much, you know, like, tormenting this guy,
Right.
and he's got a camcorder. To my knowledge, that is all Heath in terms of giving the creative freedom
Mm,
within that scene to do what he needed to do. To my knowledge, I had read an article a little bit ago that had brought up the idea that for that sequence, because it's a handheld,
right.
that Heath was given a lot of creative freedom within that scene. He understood the character at that point. He knew how the character would drive it home. And it was like, hey, you got this. Go, because again, it's a very short scene. It's not very long. And it's very quick, and he's just holding a handheld and he does everything. I'm a man of my word and whatnot. And I think that's really cool that even for that moment, if that is indeed true, what I had read, that's a really cool moment and a lot of trust that Nolan was putting in Heath. And not to say Nolan wasn't present, but it was just like, hey, you got this. Like this is your moment. Be free and go for it. And it's a scary scene. It's a very scary scene
Yeah,
because you can hear the different levels of Joker in this scene. Like he's almost he's mocking him throughout. He goes, "Oh, you do," and he's touching his face and he's laughing. But then he says, "Look at me." And the individual refuses to look, and he lets out this very guttural, like animalistic, primal, like "Look at me!" Like
yeah,
it's scary, and it's like whoa. And he goes, you know what I mean? And it's like, wait a minute. So like, there's layers of the character in this scene where he can be, you know, he can try to be silly and theatric, and at the same time, he can be very, very terrifying.
we then move on to the dinner scene, which is spliced with other scenes going on as well. We'll get to those in a second.
Oh yeah.
This is a dinner party for Dent, so he can get sponsors. And Bruce gets off the chopper, and he arrives late to the party, but
Mhm.
he wants to help Harvey. He wants Harvey to get these sponsors because
Yeah.
he wants Harvey um, to be able to just continue doing his job and such. Maybe if he runs for mayor one day and all that good
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And this is a nice slogan, Harvey. It sure got Rachel's attention. I believe
Yeah,
in Harvey
believe in
Dent,
Harvey Dent. Yep.
So he's still taking his digs at Harvey, even though he believes in him.
Mhm.
But he wants to be able to retire Batman so he can be with Rachel. And Rachel scolds him. I can tell when you're making fun of him. He may not be able to tell, but I can tell when you're making fun of Harvey. And but this is the first time we hear Bruce actually verbalize it. I can leave Batman behind and then we can finally be together. But
Yeah.
Gotham needs a face, not a masked man like Batman. Get a
Yeah.
shift scene. And we see a Joker card that's attached to the body of a cop. And the DNA, it was the policeman that Joker killed when he was
Mhm.
torturing him. and the DNA matches 3 people: Judge Cirillo, Harvey Dent, and Commissioner Loeb. So we then see the people that are targeted get hurt.
Mhm.
And in one moment, Loeb gets poisoned.
Yeah.
He's drinking something, and Gordon's like, no, no. Dent gets knocked out by Bruce. Rachel screaming, what are you doing? And then Judge Cirillo gets blown up in her
There's a
car.
lot. Like, it's all simultaneously
Boom, boom,
happening.
boom.
Boom, boom, and it's so quick. And you're like, "Whoa," like, everything is popping off right now.
Right. Um, they hand her a paper, and they tell her it's to tell you where you're supposed to go or where you're
Mhm.
headed. And and it says up.
It just says up.
So
That's
those
it.
policemen are in on it. They knew what was
Yep.
going to happen. Joker cards everywhere. Right before the scene, something serious happened. They were joking around, and then Harvey looks at her. Let's get serious now. What's your answer?
Yeah.
And she loves him, but she can't give an answer of the. Obviously, we know it's about marriage, but it's not
Yep.
really confirmed yet. And the bosses, we find out they've accepted Joker's offer to kill Batman, and that's why he ended up targeting these people that we talked about: Commissioner Loeb and Judge Cirillo, Harvey Dent as well. The mayor hasn't gotten hit just yet, and Joker. After all this has happened, this is happening all at the same time. Joker finally arrives at the fundraiser dinner. It's an amazing scene, and
Yeah.
apparently this is the first time Heath Ledger had been on set as the Joker. So we've seen him already in the movie, but this is the first time he's actually filmed in real time.
Mhm.
Makes a grand entrance, and it's just this is just a trivia it's said over and over again at this point. But it needs to be said that he did such a good job when he walked in. Michael Caine forgot his line, and Nolan kept it. He was supposed to say something, and Nolan kept it in the movie. And if you go back, you can see Michael Caine is so in
Yes.
shock and in awe of the performance that Heath Ledger is giving that he forgets his line, and they kept it in the final cut.
You see him because they make it a point that you see Michael Caine, like, you see him, and he's like you can just see this look on his face that he's just like, "Oh my god." You know what I mean? Like, he's in awe of what he's watching as Heath Ledger comes out of the elevator.
Right. And good on Ledger. He knew that there was supposed to be something there, but he just kept going because,
Kept going.
and maybe we hear Nolan saying, keep going. Maybe
Yeah.
he's off camera saying, just keep going. So Rachel gets threatened. And for the second time in the movie, we hear, do you want to know how I got these scars? So first it was his abusive father. And now he's saying he did it for his wife because her face got carved up by the sharks due to gambling.
Yeah.
He carved up his own face, and now she can't stand the sight of me. Now I see the bright side. Now I'm always smiling. Haha. Um, he ends up getting into a brawl with Batman and the goons as well. And he's holding Rachel by a window that he shoots, with a gun. He shoots out the window with a gun. He's holding Rachel. And Batman says, let her go. And without hesitation, very poor choice of words, drops her out the
And then
window.
drops her.
Wild.
This whole sequence is really good too because again, um, when he's telling the story of the scars and the story's different, that's when I was like, "Oh,
Right.
okay. Okay, we're not gonna know." I'm like, it's a game to him. Like, it's just like, oh, like, he changes the narrative, he changes the story for each person and individual. And I thought that was really cool. And you got that whole brawl sequence and whatnot. But I love that moment. I absolutely love that moment when he blows the window out and Batman goes, let her go. And I don't know why. It's just it's such a good pun from the Joker where he just like very poor choice of words and he just lets her go. And you're like, oh my God. And then obviously, your boy Batman just jumps out the window and gets her no problem. It's all good.
Right. So, I have a little bit of a suspension of disbelief here. It's a little nitpicky, but not too much.
Mhm.
He jumps out the window and he catches her and he's able to land on a car, but nothing happens to him. So,
Yeah.
we've discussed this. It could be the armor. It could be he was able to catch the wind a little bit and
Yeah.
parachute himself a little bit. It's not really
That
explained.
Yeah, it's not.
We have to like kind of do a little work
That's
on our own here.
That's the headcanon that I rolled with, that
Yeah,
because like obviously there's great sound design in the movie, and you hear the cape like catching wind. So I'm like, oh, I wonder if he's hitting pockets. Like every so often he's hitting certain pockets with his cape, so it's slowing down his trajectory. Because there's also a person in the car. There's a driver
right.
in I believe it's a cab, but there's a person in the car, and you can see that it doesn't completely demolish the car the same way he demolished the car in the very beginning of the movie when he was going after Scarecrow. When he jumped down on that at full force, like the car is destroyed. This one, not so much. So my head canon was like, okay. I was like, all right, I'm a little okay, his cape caught the wind a little bit every so often to slow down the trajectory just enough that when they hit, it helped absorb some of the blow at least.
We have a we have we have scenes now where Bruce is trying to understand the Joker's motivation,
Mhm.
and Alpha drops the iconic line, "Some men just want to watch the world burn,"
Yeah.
and but Bruce is still trying to figure him out. He's still trying to figure him out. We get the ballistic scene with the bullet,
This was aw
and absolutely,
this was
just
awesome. This was
another
great
scene.
detective stuff.
Correct,
This was
another
great.
scene with the gadgets, right out of the animated show, right out of the Rocksteady Arkham trilogy. Just really cool scene. Just another just displaying just how cool the gadgets are that Batman has.
Yeah. His intelligence, his detective skills. I remember the first time I was watching it, I was like, "Wait, what's he doing?" And he's shooting a bullet into the different bricks, and he's checking the fragments, and I'm like, "Man, I'm not smart enough to be Batman, bro." I said, I wouldn't be able to figure this out." You know what I mean? And it was cool. It was another layer that I appreciated about Batman was his fine detective skills, and I thought that they were doing a really good job showcasing this in this moment.
Absolutely. We then see a scene with Coleman Reese, the accountant, with Lucius Fox.
Oh
He
God.
he discovers that all the tech is being used by Batman. He he deduces that Fox is behind it all, and by proxy, Bruce Wayne is Batman.
Mhm.
And he threatens to expose him unless he's paid 10 million a year for the rest of his life. And Fox tells him a joke. He says, "You think that this person dresses up as a bat and beats up criminals? You want to threaten him? Good luck with that."
It's
Um,
so funny.
yeah,
It's so funny. He goes, so your boss, one of the richest people on the planet, who spends his nights beating people to a pulp,
right.
and your plan is to blackmail this person? And you can see his face kind of go through the motions of like, oh, I didn't think about that. And I love that Lucius is so arrogant. He goes, yeah, good luck with that. And
Right.
it's so good.
I would have liked to see this mentioned to Bruce to see what his
Mhm.
reaction would have been. We never get
Yeah.
to see it. We come
Nope.
back to Coleman Reese with this information though again by the end of the movie,
Yes.
so
Yes.
that's why we don't go into it now. And Reese, "Oh, you can keep that, just um and uh, perhaps this is us getting a little sweaty again, but apparently he's Coleman Reese, Mr. Reese. And if you
Mhm.
say it fast, it sounds like mysteries.
Mystery.
And people are thinking maybe this is a nod to the Riddler. We don't
It's like,
know.
yeah, like he
Yeah,
figured it out, like he knows who
right.
this is. It's again,
Because
it's
this is something
no
the Riddler would do.
yes, yes.
So
Great scene. So funny.
yeah, we get the Commissioner Loeb film scene. And by the way, let's just put it out there. Loeb, more than likely that's a shout out to Jeff Loeb, a
Mhm.
well known writer in the DC Comics world. So we get the funeral scene. Bruce finds the cops tied up, and what ends up happening is Joker and his people, they tout all the cops up so they can get the rifles because they're giving
Yeah,
that rifle salute for Commissioner Loeb. The timer goes off by the blind. Once again, how calculated the Joker is. Because
yeah.
if the blind goes up, there's policemen outside waiting to see if there's something going on. And separate police shoot at that window,
Mhm.
possibly, almost hitting Bruce, or whoever else would have discovered the policeman up there. And Joker, in the only scene in the entire movie, we see him without the makeup.
Yes.
standing in the line there. He shoots at the stage, targeting the mayor. He gets Gordon. Gordon's dead. Just wild. And Barbara Gordon gets the news. The wife, the son Jimmy is shown, and go play with your sister, Jimmy. Mommy needs to talk to these people right now. They find out Rachel Dawes is targeted next, and Ramirez ends up transporting her to get her out of there
Yeah.
because all the stuff is going down. We get a dual interrogation next.
Mm-hmm.
Batman with Maroney, and Dent with Thomas Schiff, rather. And from this height, I would survive the fall, Batman. I'm counting on it.
And he just
Yeah,
drops him,
breaks his
bro.
leg.
Like I it's so funny because we kind of saw a similar scene recently in Matt Reeves' The Batman, where Batman's going through the club and just beating everybody up.
Right.
And I thought the sequence was so cool because Batman's going through the club, he's beating everybody up, and he just pounces right in front of him, and he just picks him up slowly. And like you said, he takes him outside. He goes, "Yo, next time you're trying to scare somebody, pick a better spot. Fall from this height wouldn't kill me." And he goes, "I'm counting on it." And he just
Right.
drops
Drops him.
him, and
Yeah.
you hear his legs just shatter. Like he
Crunch.
hits feet first, and you just hear that crunching sound, and his legs are shot, and he's in a lot of pain. And that's where
Yeah.
you get like a really scary realization where you start to realize that there's very little that can be done to Joker. Like he's like, like who is his friends? Who does he hang on? He goes, "Friend, have you met this guy?" Like he's like, there's nothing you can do to the Joker. Like there's nothing you can say. And like Batman's starting to be like, huh. Like it's an interesting interrogation scene.
We shift to Harvey interrogating Thomas Schiff, who was
Yeah.
shot. And that's where we find out that Rachel is targeted next because he has Rachel Dawes' name
Mm-hmm.
on a plate and he's flipping for it. He's flipping each time he's pulling the trigger because there's only one bullet in the chamber. He's playing Russian roulette with Thomas Schiff, played by David Dastmalchian, who would go on to have
Yes.
so many other roles.
So many in the DC verse, the Arrowverse. Like
Yeah,
I was so happy for him, man, because I remember he's got a very recognizable face.
absolutely.
So seeing him in like the CW shows, like, oh, there he is, and like, oh, look, he's in Gotham. Oh, look, he's in the Flash. Oh my God, now he's here. He did. I think the most recent one was the Suicide Squad. I think that's the
Yeah,
most recent. So like, I'm like, oh, I'm very happy for that guy. But yeah,
yeah.
he's a troubled individual in this movie.
He must have made such an impact on The Dark Knight that Warner Brothers kept calling him back. And
Yeah,
no matter how big or small the role was, he kept saying yes, because when you're a working actor, that's what you do
yeah,
when you want to be a
yeah.
working actor. And, eventually he got like a pretty decent role in The Suicide Squad eventually. So
Mhm.
we've all been rooting for him ever since The Dark
Yeah,
Knight. So it's been
I
great.
like him a lot. But that scene is really good too because again, he's doing the flip the coin.
Right.
He's flipping the coin. He goes, "Hey, heads, you get to keep yours. Tails, not so lucky." And like he's doing it, and I love when Batman catches it.
Yes.
And again, it's brought up where he goes, "You'd risk um taking this man's life away up to chance." And Harvey again goes, "Not exactly." Like they haven't shown the audience yet. So he
Right.
just keeps going, "Not exactly." And you're like, what does he mean not
Why does he
exactly? He
keep
keeps
saying that?
flipping. He keeps flipping and he's saying like, "Hey, this is going to be happen." So I love that scene.
Right. And we get a little nod to Two-Face because Two-Face would flip the coin when making major
Mhm.
decisions. So we see Harvey doing it repeatedly there. Um, And then Batman tells him, I'm going to do it. People are dying and I need to turn myself in. And Harvey just goes off because at this point, Harvey believes that Gordon is dead
Yeah.
and Rachel is being targeted. And now Batman's going to give in, and he
Yeah.
just screams at him, "You can't give in." Screams, "You can't give in." Great, great delivery from Aaron Eckhart.
Aaron Eckhart, you're
Mm,
awesome in this movie. We're going to
yeah,
give you your flowers later. We're going to give you your
yeah,
flowers.
absolutely. So Bruce is ready to turn himself in. He's thinking him and Rachel can finally be together if he does. And tells Alfred to burn everything.
Yeah.
Anything that will lead back to you, Lucius, or Rachel, gone. You know,
Yep, get rid of it.
Mm. And well, Alfred, today's the day you get to say, "I told you so." Well,
Yeah.
Master Wayne, today I don't want to.
Yeah.
but I did bloody tell you.
Yeah, again, there's so they have such a great relationship, and I
It's
love that
great.
aspect. It goes, we all know you're looking forward to we all know how much you love it, and I told you so. Well, when the day comes, Master Bruce, even I won't want to. And the day came, and he goes, I don't want to. And he goes, but I did bloody tell you. And I was like, it's so good. It's
It's
so good.
great. So we have this press conference scene where Dent claims that he is Batman to take out to bring the Joker out, because this
Mm-hmm.
is what the Joker wants. And this press conference is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people talk about the bad acting here, and they call these people extras. But if you could shine some light on that for me, as someone that has been on set, I've been on set too, but you have a little more film knowledge than me.
Mm-hmm.
Extras don't typically get lines.
No,
So
if you're an extra, you have 0 lines.
right.
Now you can be bumped up to a PE, which is a principal extra, which is usually you can get a single line.
Okay.
Like a single line. Like if you're moved to a PE, and that doesn't even guarantee it. It just means that if an opportunity comes up and they say, "Hey, can you just say this real quick?" It's usually on the cuff. Then they'll be like, "Okay, you can say it." But that it's not a guaranteed line. It's just like, "Hey, this person has a specific look. You know what? If the day comes to it and we need him to just say, move out of the way," they can do
Right.
that. But yeah, like at no point do extras get an opportunity to line deliver
Right.
like that with one of the leads.
So my guess is that these people that had lines in the scene, it was deliberate. These were the lines
Mhm.
that were supposed to be said. And if that's the
Yes.
case, these are people that are working actors that want to
Mhm.
get more work one day. So my only guess is that the reason why the scene it tends to be looked at as a bad acting scene is maybe the people are overacting to
Mhm.
sell the lines because it's supposed to be a pretty serious scene. There's one guy says, "No more dead cops," and then somebody shouts something else, and they're all shouting at Harvey. And for
Mhm.
whatever reason, it kind of falls flat to some people when they're
Mhm.
watching this scene. And um, like I said, we're not ones to bash people's performances,
No, 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 no,
but
no.
or bash a movie, so to speak. But maybe it fell flat because they were trying to over deliver or something like that.
It
You
could be.
know,
There's a couple of variables to take into consideration. This is also one of those movies where there's like tons of recognizable faces. So it also seems like it's one of those movies where there's so many people in this
right,
that for these specific parts they may not have been as crucial. You know what I mean? Like
right,
as like grueling with an audition process and being like, hey, we just need some people that say these very quick lines and like get it out, get it done, and whatnot. And they're not going to be the ones carrying it. Aaron Eckhart's going to carry the scene. It's fine. It could be that. It could be, like you said, them trying to overachieve. It is what it never really bothered me too much, but I have heard people say, like,
right.
oh, this scene kind of feels a little
Yeah.
funny. But yeah.
Um, Harvey drops another iconic line: "The night is darkest just before the dawn, and I promise you,
Yep.
the dawn is coming."
Yes.
And he says, "I am the Batman." No one in the scene believes him. Nobody watching the news believes him. Everyone's in disbelief.
Yeah.
And
Everybody's like,
Bruce,
what?
right?
What?
Well,
What?
it's time that we arrest the Batman. And Bruce is like, "Okay, here we go. It's time. I
Yep.
am the Batman." And he's like, "What?"
Yep. And he backs up.
And
And
then he stops.
Rachel is angry
Oh, yes.
because she's like, Bruce just stood there. He could have said something. And this was interesting because Alfred, a lot of times it's like, oh, like Master Bruce, like you got to know your limits, you got to do this. And I felt like there might have been somewhat of I don't know if happiness is the right word, but like um a sigh of relief that Bruce was gonna, hey, I'm Batman, like
Right.
I'm not like, but he stands up for Bruce's decision not to speak up. And he stands up for Harvey taking the blame and goes, and she's like, this isn't, courageous at all. And goes, well,
Right.
maybe Harvey and Bruce both agreed that this was the right thing to do. And she is not happy.
Rachel leaves a letter to Bruce, and Alfred says, "How will I know when to give it to him? It's not sealed." And
Yeah.
this letter comes into play later on. Uh, as Harvey is being taken away in the police convoy, which obviously everybody's in on it that this is a ruse,
Yep.
Joker attacks the convoy, and we get an insane chase scene with tons of action.
This whole thing is awesome.
Yeah, it's great. It's a lot to unpack, but we see bazookas, we see Laughter is the best medicine. Slaughter is the best
Slaughter.
medicine.
I love that little aspect of the
You
S, and
know,
I'm like, "Oh,
we see
dude,
all
come
these
on."
guns. We see a bazooka. We see the Batmobile. We see the
Again,
Batmobile.
humor. Again,
Yeah,
there's a very humorous moment because they're opening fire on the vehicle, and it's barely making a dent, right? It's an extremely armored truck,
yeah,
and the pass one of the people in the car goes, you know, you know, are we safe? Are they gonna get through? And he's gonna need something a lot bigger than that, a lot more powerful than that.
yeah.
And Joker just brings out a bazooka, and I was like, look, that's humor done right. That's humor done right.
Absolutely. The Batmobile gets blown up because it takes that bazooka blast,
Yeah.
so the truck didn't have to, and then we see a really cool scene where the Bat Pod pops out of the Batmobile. We've never seen something like that before, and then
So good.
in the shell of the Batmobile, the tumbler gets blown up, so the Bat Pod can
People
continue.
people in the theaters cheered. I remember
Yeah,
that.
that was
That
cool.
you see the wheel going and it starts to pick up, and then it says goodbye, and it shoots him out. And I remember people going, "Woo!" Like
Yeah.
it was so cool. It was so cool.
So the truck gets flipped. The Joker's driving. Yeah.
Hold on, hold on, hold
Yeah.
on, hold on, hold on.
Yeah.
That we I gotta bring up the fact, and I'm sure people know by now, but if people don't know, they really flipped that
Yeah.
gigantic truck. And again, it's why I love Nolan movies and movies in general when they do practical effects like this. And I love it because, again, as you know, like Joker knows Harvey's not Batman. He jokes about it later, but it's just to get in. We'll talk about it. But when you see Batman come out, he goes, "There's the Batman." You know, there's a Batman, and they're going head to head. And he's like, "Oh, you want to play? Come on, let's play." And Batman goes under the truck with wires.
Yeah.
And you see Joker just kind of like, where's he going? Like it's a
Right.
very like where, and then he hooks a bunch of street poles and lights.
Mhm.
And when that sucker flips, and you see Heath in the vehicle just kind of like, huh, and the whole thing, and it's like you hear nothing
Yeah.
but the sound of the truck just completely flipping and hitting. And I remember just again another moment in the theater where people were just like, woo. And then Batman takes his bike, he rides up the wall, turns and turns back
Yeah.
around, and people just like applaud it. Like
Yeah.
it was like
Wonderful.
such a good scene, man.
And, uh, and to do that, we get a game of chicken almost because he's going
Yeah.
head to head with the truck, and then he flips the truck, but then we get a second game of chicken where
Hmm.
it's just Joker by himself, and perhaps a little callback to Batman '89 where he says, "Hit me." You
Yeah,
know,
come on,
"Come
hit
on,
me.
hit
Hit
me, hit
me.
me, I want you to do
Hit
it,"
me.
because
I want you to do it. I want you to do
this
it.
is the
Come on, hit
first
me.
time we see that Joker's just about chaos
Yep.
because he doesn't care if he gets killed. He wants to show everybody that Batman's not a good guy if he's gonna kill me like this,
He's
you
like,
know?
yo,
If he hurts me like this, he's thinking he's gonna kill him, but at this point, it's just all about chaos with Joker. There's anarchy, he keeps
yep.
saying this over and over again. So
He
obviously
keeps
Batman
saying it too. And he keeps saying, he goes, I want you to do it. He goes,
want
come on,
you to
hit me. I
do
want
it.
you to do it. I want you to do it. Come on, hit me. I want you to do it. And he's not yelling this out. Like he's not like, come on, like it's to himself. He's like,
Right,
come on, hit me. I want you to do it. I want you. Come on, hit me. And it's not until he gets close where he's like, hit me. And then,
right.
Batman can't do it.
And he's yelling this knowing that Batman won't do it,
No, like he's
He
not gonna
knows.
do it.
He's too
He's
good.
not gonna do it. And he wipes out. He doesn't do it and he wipes out.
So, Batman, who's kinda passed out from the wipeout, he goes to try to unmask him, and there's a cop behind him that apprehends Joker, and hooray, it's Gordon who faked his death.
Could you
And
just give me a minute? And he yanks him off.
it's a great moment.
It's so good.
And,
Could you just give me a minute?
they apprehend the Joker. Gordon is promoted to commissioner by the mayor, and, you know, Joker, the Heath Ledger, once again, an improvised moment. Yep,
Improv, yep.
yep, he's clapping there. Um, Gordon shows up to his front door, and his wife didn't know about this. She slaps him
Bro,
immediately. He couldn't tell anybody.
it's, it shows how serious this had gotten, that he
Right.
needed to go that deep undercover, that his wife didn't know, his son didn't know, his kids didn't know. And it's horrifying because, like, I can't imagine that type of pain and heartache only for, for him to walk back up the door, to the door, and she's so angry and she's hitting and she's crying,
Right,
and it's a really sad scene. But you're happy he's alive,
right,
but it's a really sad scene of what she had to go through.
right. Because we had the earlier scene where she's like, are you out there? You brought this craziness on us." And we see just this
Hmm.
little, this bow that, Batman does. It's like, "Crap, I'm sorry," you know?
Yeah.
I'm going to assume Batman's the only one that knew that Gordon faked his death because Dent says something, "Oh, you like keeping things close to the chest."
Hmm.
And it looks like he didn't know. It
Yeah.
looks like
Yeah.
Dent didn't know. I wanna say somebody had to know, and I'm gonna
It's
guess maybe Batman.
Yeah, because it was. I feel like if anybody was gonna work together on this specific plan,
Right,
it would be Batman and Gordon, because again, it's a very again well calculated, well thought out plan,
right.
for Gordon to be able to be undercover, be able to get into the SWAT vehicle, not be able to do all of that. Like I'm like, all right, they had to have planned something at least. If not, Gordon is a boss. If nobody knew, dude, you killed it. But I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
maybe I'm like, I think Batman probably knew.
yeah.
Batman probably knew.
So at the police station, we get the infamous interrogation scene,
Oh,
and, so Joker finds Batman entertaining. He doesn't wanna kill him, and, "You complete me, LOL."
this
Um,
whole this whole thing is probably the most copied acting scene I've ever seen online.
yeah,
It's the Batman Joker interrogation scene, whether it's for parodies or whether it's for acting exercises. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people do this as an exercise in itself, because my God, these two working across from one another, it is. I it might be. I don't know if I want to say it's the most recognizable scene in the movie, but I think it's one of the first things people think about when they think
right.
about The Dark Knight, was this interaction right here that we're about to talk about.
Joker may not have figured out who Batman was, but he figured out that Batman has feelings for Rachel because he
Mhm.
jumped at her when she went out the window. He doesn't know who Batman is, but apparently who Batman is, he has feelings for Rachel. Or maybe he did figure out it was Bruce Wayne because he knows that Bruce and Rachel are friends, you know?
Yeah,
It's not really revealed.
he has a very interesting line, because he goes, for a while there, I thought you really were Dent, the way you threw yourself after her.
Yes.
And that sets Bruce off. Like, it
Right.
sets him off, because he's like, oh, you know what I mean? And then he goes, okay, you're not Harvey. And he goes, does Harvey know about you and his little bunny? Like, he's pushing.
Right.
Joker's pushing real. He knows now. He's like, okay, Rachel's a soft spot. I got a soft spot I'm gonna go through.
Exactly. Um, he through the interrogation where Batman's beating on him, he reveals that, she and Dent they're in two separate buildings that are about to
Mhm.
explode. Um, as we said, the interrogation scene, this word gets thrown around a lot, but it's a true masterclass in acting between these two
Yes.
actors, especially
Yes.
Ledger just heading things up. Uh, and then we finally get it verbalized here. You're going to break your one rule. So
Yeah.
it's never stated that I don't kill, but you know, in this universe, Batman doesn't kill. Which, by the way, we will continue re-examining that because it's loose in the Nolan trilogy.
Yes, and in this movie,
Correct.
they get loose with it, and it's a really good moment too, because he says, he obviously wants to know where they are, and he goes, "Well, you're gonna have to break your one rule if you want to save one of them." He's like, "Them," and they're holding the conversation, and he goes, "I'm considering it." Like, he goes, I'm considering. He goes, "Well, you're gonna have to consider it." It's a really good scene, because again, it's almost acknowledged that Joker knows that Batman has this self-righteousness that he brings
Right.
up later, that you won't do certain things. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna push you." And as you mentioned, he gives them the addresses. And one of my favorite things about the scene too was seeing the frustration on Batman. One of the
Right.
very few times we've seen a massive amount of frustration, because he's hitting Joker, which is what Batman does. He uses physical violence. Like, when he's fighting goons and bad guys and villains and stuff to get information, he uses fear tactics, and he's not getting through. And one of my favorite things is he's hitting Joker, and Joker's just laughing it off. And he goes, "There's nothing you can do with all your strength." And
Right.
it's just like, it's a haunting thing, because he doesn't know what to do at this point. He's like, where are they? He's like, killing is making a choice. And he goes, where are they? Choosing, the lovely bride to be, and he hits him and he laughs. And like he's cowering, but he's like, there's nothing you can do.
Right.
And he goes, tell me where they are. And he goes, I am. That's the point. And then he gives him the addresses. And little do we know what he just did.
Exactly. So once again, when you beat on somebody like that, they're going to bleed from their nose,
Yeah.
from their mouth, and from their head if you bash their head into a glass pane.
Oh yeah.
But because this movie is PG-13, there could not be any blood
Mm-mm.
because, once again, it would have made the movie rated R. And Nolan goes on to talk about this time and time again, that there were many moments in this movie that he had to pull back because he didn't want a rated R movie. He wanted
Yeah.
a PG-13 movie for more audiences to see it, and also maybe low key he wanted to see what the box office would do too. Well, maybe
Yeah.
the studio wanted a PG-13 movie. Let's put it out there,
Mhm.
So because I don't think Nolan cares about the box office, so I
No,
don't want to
no,
say that.
look, Nolan, he's a true filmmaker at
Right,
heart. He's just gonna make the movie he wants to make. But yeah, I can't imagine the scene with blood
right,
because the scene is again, it's an amazing scene. There's a lot of tension, but it is very violent. And he's pummeling this guy, just pummeling, and he's eating it. Glass of plain, he throws it
right.
to the glass. He flips him on the table. Like it's very violent. And if you would have added blood to the scene, without a shadow of a doubt, that probably would have given it the R rating.
Looking back, I want to say Memento is probably the only rated R movie I can recall that Nolan did.
And
Well,
and Insomnia,
and
right?
Insomnia. Yeah,
Insomnia.
early
Yeah.
on he did
Yeah.
rated R because of the language and
Yes.
stuff. So,
Yes.
but since Batman Begins, I want to say most of his work has been PG-13. So that's either a studio move or maybe a
I
move from
agree.
him.
I agree.
Maybe as a filmmaker, it's challenging to show as much as you can show without going all the way. And
Yeah.
I could see Nolan being like, no, I don't need to go, hard with a rated R to go there.
Yeah.
So Batman goes to the address that Joker says Rachel is at, while Gordon goes to find Dent. But we get to find out Joker switched the addresses, and Batman ends up finding Dent, and Gordon's on his way to get
Oof.
Rachel. We get this heartfelt scene where Rachel and Harvey are talking to each other through the phone system, and she says, well, my answer is yes. I've been thinking about it, and my answer is yes. Don't worry about it, Harvey. They're coming, and Batman gets there. Harvey's just losing it. Why'd you come for me? You should be saving Rachel right now. Why'd you come for me? And Batman's just trying to get him out the building. And in the mid sentence, Rachel's talking to Harvey. It's okay, Harvey. Someone will. Boom. And you see her hair fly up, and you see it. It's like a split second. It cuts from there to the outside of the building blowing up. She gets blown up.
Yeah.
It's the most shocking scene in the entire movie, in my opinion,
Yeah.
because you don't
Hands
think
down.
you don't think Nolan's going to kill Rachel, and he does. He just introduced her in Batman Begins,
Mhm.
and she's supposed to be the love of Bruce's life. No, she's going to make it to the end of this movie, possibly come up in the third movie if there's a third movie made. No, we're killing Rachel right now.
It's such a tragic scene because again, there's a flip of emotions because when they're able to have communication with one another, she says that she goes, "Hey, they said only one of us was going to be saved and they were going to have to choose." And Harvey completely accepts that he's going to die.
Right,
He's just like, "Oh, Rachel, it's okay. They're going to come for you." And she goes, "I know, but I don't want them to," because now she's dealing with the realization that she's going to live a life without Harvey in it.
right,
And it's killing her. And like she's almost giving those final moments like, "You know what? Like I know I waited, but I do have an answer for you. Yes, the answer is yes." Because she's like, "This is it. Like, this is it." And again, there are very specific moments that I remember about watching in a theater. And when Batman opens the door and you see Harvey, I remember the audible gasp from everyone in that theater. Just like the realization of what just happened.
yeah,
Because it wasn't Batman got it wrong. It was Joker tricked him. Like
yeah.
again, Joker understood that Rachel meant something and he switched the addresses. And it was so tragic, it was so sad. And one thing that I forgot to mention was we started to almost get, I don't want to say excited because we're not rooting for this, but Harvey falls and you see gas
Right.
on his one side of his face, and you're kind of like, are they going to do it?
Right.
Are they gonna do it? And you're like, no, he's gonna die. He's gonna explode. They're gonna save
Right.
Rachel. They're gonna do it. And then you're like, oh God. And then he brings him out. You have that explosion, just completely shocking. You can't believe they did it.
Yeah.
And then as they're exiting the building, the fire catches on Harvey and it just burns that one side. And I remember as a fan, like as the sweaties in the theater,
Yeah.
we're just like, he's doing it.
He's yeah.
He's gonna do it. Just incredible stuff, but unbelievably tragic.
And Nolan not wanting to do exactly what the comic book did, went and did his own take on it. In the comics, I believe Harvey's on the stand and
Yes.
somebody comes and throws acid on his face,
Throws
and
ass
that's
in his face. Yep.
right. But Nolan said, I'll do things a little differently here.
Yeah.
Bruce thinks that Rachel was going to wait for him, and Alfred ends up taking the letter away because the letter says, "That day will never come.
Yep.
I'm going to
She's
marry
choosing Harvey.
Harvey.
She's
I'm going to
choosing
marry
Harvey.
Harvey." And Bruce is sitting there, Harvey can never know she was gonna wait for me, and, "Oh, what's that? I can wait," you know?
Take away. Yep.
Um, Batman leaves the coin, the double-sided coin that he gave Rachel, which ended up he found in the fire, after the building got blown up, and Harvey reaches, and he sees the clean side of his double-sided coin, and he flips it over, and he sees the ash on the other
The
side, and
ash just
that's when he
just
knew.
burnt.
And, we got a nice not a nice, but we got a Nolan scene where it's quiet, but you just see him screaming. You
Yeah.
don't hear him.
And again, Nolan is doing a really good job of just giving us enough because again, like you can see like there's definitely something going on, but you're
Right,
not getting a reveal yet. And again, as fans, you're like, did he do it? Like, did he do the Two-Face? Is that
right,
happening? And you just kind of see this. But again, it's another thing that I love when films do this, where less is more. We don't have to necessarily hear that painful guttural scream. It's just silent and you just see it. And that in itself was just painful. And it was the realization that he realized that he lost her, completely lost her, and he
right.
just let it all out.
Um, Gordon ends up meeting Harvey, who now has lost everything,
Mhm.
and, we finally get to hear the name Two-Face in the movie.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, I Harvey, I need to know who I can trust." He's like, "Why would you believe me now?"
Yeah.
It's like, well, because Gordon is now seeing how far down things have spiraled, what the
Mhm.
Joker's done to the city, what the Joker's done to the Gotham City Police Department. He sees what Joker did to Harvey, both physically and then emotionally speaking as well with Rachel. Gordon doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And at this time, Harvey just starts checking out. He's like, I'm done. You
He's
know,
done. That's it.
what did you and the boys, what was that nickname you had for me? He's like, I don't know, say it. He screams, say it to
Say it.
Harvey Two-Face, because he was in internal affairs. Nobody likes the internal affairs guy,
Nope.
so they called him that. The first time, he's like, I'm sorry, Harvey. Is like, no, you're not. Not yet.
Not yet. And just like it
Disgusting,
was
bro. Whew.
it was so well done because obviously the only other live action version of Two-Face we had was from Batman Forever, which looked
Right.
very, very, very silly. This legitimately looked like a burn victim who had lost massive amounts of skin and flesh, and you could see
Right.
the tendons in
Right.
the jawline, the eye completely exposed, and it was really great work. It was really, really well done. And he goes, "No, you're not." Not yet. And I remember again, it's that fan moment of like, I can't believe Nolan did it. Like, because again, the films are very grounded, and the idea of Two-Face to many people like, oh, like Nolan can't even pull that off. That's crazy. He's like, no, like we're gonna do it. He's gonna be a massive burn victim.
Right.
And they even said it, like Gordon brings it the fact, like they're saying that you are denying skin grafts. Like you're in a lot of pain and you're denying skin grafts because again, he's just refusing. He's like, no, No, no. It's like it's almost as if he wants to feel that pain. Like it's not explained or anything, but he's just refusing. He's refusing the treatment as if he's just going to let himself slowly die from these injuries. Again, they don't really talk about it, but the image of it in itself was like,
Right.
wow. Like
And
I was
once
blown
again,
away.
that could have gotten a rated R rating as well from showing
Hmm.
it, you know,
I
but I guess
wonder I wonder if they had numerous looks that they tried and maybe
right.
some were too far,
Right.
but this one was excellent.
So he
Excellent
kept
look.
he kept pulling it back to the point where he's like, "Okay, is this PG-13 now?" Maybe that's what he
Yeah.
ended up doing,
Yeah.
you know? The Joker ends up escaping custody due to the people on his or the mob's payroll. We don't know.
Mhm.
He ends up escaping, you know, he plants a bomb in the belly of one of the criminals that ends up blowing up, and,
He gets into a fight with that one officer because he
yeah,
pushes the officer. He keeps pushing him. He goes, "How many of your friends have I killed?"
yeah,
And he tells him, he goes, "I know people like you who get off on pain or whatever." He goes,
right,
"You killed," and he goes, "You killed was it 7?
6.
6?" He goes, "You killed 6 of my men." He goes, "6." Like
Yeah, he mouthed it, yeah.
he's pushing him. And then they get into that altercation and they do something very small. It's not really a big thing, but you see Joker crack his neck, and it's almost insinuating that Joker is prepared to physically, combat this dude, not just take the hits.
Right,
And it's an interesting portrayal because you're like, oh, he's just going to take more abuse, and he just kind of cracks his neck, and the next thing you know, he's got the guy, and he's got
right,
some sort of like some sort of blade by his neck, and you're like, how the heck did that happen? And it's like, all right, okay, cool. And then, as you mentioned, the cell phone bomb in his stomach.
right, right. So, he escapes custody, he gets Lau, and he puts Lau at the top of all the money that the
Mhm.
mob has paid him now because, you know, he's doing what he said he was going to do. He takes the cigar from the Chechen and he throws it at at the money,
Yep.
and it's like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'm burning my half," you
Yeah.
know, and killing Lau because Lau has all the information, you know,
Mhm.
and you tell you and your men that this is my city now. Everybody works for me, and it's not about the money. It's about sending a message.
Yeah,
Everything burns.
I love the line, and it was in the trailer where he goes, "This city deserves a better class of criminal, and I'm gonna give it to him." And I thought that
Yeah,
was so interesting because he's like, "The way you guys have been doing it, you're not doing it. You guys are scared. Batman's roughing you up." Because this is how you do it. It's not about money. It's about sending a message. And I thought that was like, I was like, oh man, like he's got the criminal crime lord thing down.
yeah. So Coleman Reese goes on the news stating that he knows who Batman is and he's going to expose it. And the Joker can't have that because that's not a part of the plan.
It's not fun.
Yeah. So he threatens to blow up every hospital in Gotham or key hospitals unless Reese is killed. While the police are evacuating the hospitals, um, Gordon is kind of struggling to keep Reese alive because people are coming after Reese now because people have family members and friends in the hospitals.
Yep. Yep.
While all this distraction is going on, we get Joker meeting the new Harvey Dent, and he's dressed up as a nurse, little
The
iconic,
very
yeah,
the very popular nurse outfit. I love
yeah.
it. It was so good.
And this is where he finally, well, we don't know it yet, but this is the first time where it looks like he might succeed in corrupting Harvey, which is something we don't know yet, but what he wanted to do,
Mhm.
and he needs to take revenge for Rachel. Great acting between these two in this
Yep.
scene, and I believe I read something where Aaron Eckhart said he was he didn't know how things were going to go, and then after the scene was over, Ledger approached him and said, "Hey, you know what that was? That was acting. That's what we just
Yeah.
did. That was acting." You know, so it's pretty
That's
cool.
it is really cool, and it's a great scene because it's where we start to see how good Joker is at manipulating people.
Right.
And he manipulates Harvey pretty well, and he brings up the idea of like, hey man, like I'm not a guy with a plan. I'm a dog chasing a car. I don't know what to do with one if I caught it. He goes, but this
Right.
city's full of schemers and people to make plans, and you were a schemer, and look where that got you. And he's gaslighting Harvey
Oh,
Dent. You
yeah.
know what I mean? Like it's crazy how good he is at it. And I think what the big switch is that he puts the gun in Harvey's hand. He gives him the opportunity. And he goes, listen, like, you want to introduce chaos? Let's introduce chaos. And I also want to bring up the fact that he defines chaos in a way where he says, if I were to tell you that gangbangers were going to get shot, nobody panics.
Right.
If I told you that, a military convoy, blew up, nobody panics. It's all part of the plan. He goes, but if I kill one measly old mayor, everybody loses their minds.
Right.
And he's just like, create a little anarchy. And I love this scene because he gives him the gun. He gives it to him. He's like,
Yep.
hey, and then Harvey's like, hey, all right, let's play. You want it? Let's do it. And Joker uses that one word that Harvey's been using. He goes, and the thing about chaos, it's fair,
Yeah.
which has been Harvey's sting. He's like, it's about what's fair. And it was, again, master manipulator. And he puts the gun, and Harvey says, he goes, hey, listen, look, heads, you live, tails, you die. And he's like, now we're talking. And they don't show us, but we know the outcome.
Right. And then once again, Joker doesn't care because he's all about chaos. So
Mhm.
if I die, oh well, then I show everybody what kind of person Harvey was. If
Yeah.
I died earlier, then I show everybody who Batman was. If I die now, then I show everybody who Harvey is. So,
It's interesting. I've seen people theorize online
oh
because,
yeah, they're just
and
blocking the
that he's blocking the hammer, that his finger is there blocking the hammer so that he
no,
was always in control. And I was like, I don't know, man. It's a little more chaotic if he just says, hey, let's see what happens.
maybe
Like,
or
that's
maybe
very,
not.
yeah,
To
it's
to
very
me,
Joker.
to me, the Joker's no, the Joker
Yeah,
just wants to see if he'll do it.
he's chaos. He just like, hey, like, go ahead, let's see what happens. But it's so great. And again, it's so funny because he leaves the room and he puts hand
Yeah, yeah,
sanitizer. It's, again, there's little things that I'm like, this is so great. This is so
yeah.
great.
So we need to talk about where the trigger is being used to blow up all the buildings.
Yes.
And I'm going to assume that's not the thing controlling the buildings. It was,
No.
the people offset. But a
Yes.
malfunction happens, and instead of excuse me, the scene cutting, Ledger keeps playing with the trigger
I
and
loved it.
throwing his hands up in the air as if it's a part of the scene. And then whoever's off, camera, they got it to work, blowing up the rest of the buildings. And then we get the wide shot of the models blowing up, obviously. But
Yeah.
that live shot, and apparently that was supposed to be one take. So that's
Yes.
why Ledger didn't stop. He
Yep.
kept going through the process, and Nolan would have cut it accordingly if he needed to. But lo and behold, just the acting genius of Ledger in this role, he knew to just keep going and finding something to do to improvise, and it being one of the funniest moments in the whole movie. A great moment
It's
too.
again, yeah, like, he's blowing up a hospital. Luckily, everyone has been evacuated from the hospital. But the idea that he's blowing up a hospital is horrible. But in
Right.
that moment, it was such great improv that, like, he's hitting the button, he's playing with it, he's tapping it, nothing's happening. He looks at the building, throws his hands up, and it's like, what happened? And then he smashes it again and it goes off, and he's got such great timing that he jumps, like, his body reacts to the explosion.
Yeah.
Like, he goes, oh god, and then he gets in the bus, and it's so funny. And then you find out later that it's improv, and you're
Right.
like, again, major kudos for staying in it, because I'm sure he understood, because obviously when these actors are in scenes where there's going to be a major stunt like that, they tell them, they're like, hey, listen, this is going to be a really big explosion, we got one shot to hit it,
Yep.
you know what I mean? So hit your marks and then get out, you know what I mean? The safety, hit your marks and get out. So the idea that he was able to stay in it until they made it work, because a portion of it had already exploded, like, you saw a little bit, but the big one didn't happen. So, like, him staying in it made that scene much better, and it's one of those happy accidents that scene will forever stand out because of how good that moment was.
So Harvey Dent is now on the rampage, trying to get back at all the people that are responsible for Rachel's death in one way or another. He ends up going around flipping the coin. Heads you live, tails you die. He ends up shooting Wirtz.
Mhm.
Um, he goes after Maroney, and He flips, Maroni lives. He flips again, Maroni's driver dies
Yeah.
because he shoots him, car flips and so on. And we get a scene shifted to Fox and Batman, and apparently Bruce expanded the sonar technology that we
Yeah.
saw earlier in the movie that was just for one cell phone in one location. He found a way to connect all the cell phones in the city
Every cell
to
phone,
see
dude.
what everybody is doing at the same time. And Lucius scolds him. He said, "This is wrong. You
Yeah.
shouldn't have done this. You're violating everyone's privacy just to catch the Joker. Consider this my resignation. This will be the last thing I help you do because I
Yep.
won't do this. This is not who we are. This is not who I am."
Yeah,
So,
he even says, he goes, "If this machine is still here, I won't be. Consider this my resignation." And Batman's like, "When you're done, type in your name." And I was
right.
like, "Dude, this is serious."
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, I get what Lucius is saying, but I also understand what Batman is saying,
Right.
because it's like, dude, like the Joker is destroying Gotham right now. Like, Gotham has already been in a really bad place, but Joker needs to be stopped. So I understood it. I understood both sides, and that's what I love about this scene, is that like they're both right in their own way, and I get it. And I appreciate like how upfront Lucius was. It's like, nah, man, like you're invading the privacy of everyone in Gotham, and I didn't sign up to do that. So it was a really good moment.
The city is it's just chaos throughout the city. Um People are evacuating, and Joker reveals that there are two ferries.
Hmm.
One with the criminals and one with civilians. Criminals, prisoners, whatever you want to call them. And it's rigged to explode at midnight unless one group sacrifices the other. And we get a fight between Batman and Joker. Joker gets the upper hand, and or Joker waits, and then midnight hits and nothing happens.
Yeah.
There's a crucial scene here where tiny Zeus Lester
Yes.
grabs
I
the
was so happy
trigger.
to see him.
I'm gonna do what we should have done from the beginning. He's accepting his fate as a prisoner, and it's like if the civilians want to blow us up, fine. We're not going to do that to them because we deserve to be here. Throws it right out the window. The
It's
other
such a
civil,
good moment, man. It's such a
yeah,
good
the
moment
other
because you
civilian,
you don't know what he's gonna do.
right,
Like
right,
like
and obviously he's the biggest guy in the room.
yes.
you know,
And the guy holding it looks terrified. He's
right,
like, and he goes, "Give it to me. I'll tell them, you can tell them I took it by force. Just
right.
give it to me." And I'm like, "Don't give it to him. Don't give it to him." Because I'm judging. I'm judging. Like, as I'm like, "Oh no, don't give it to him." And when he threw it out the window, I was like, "Wow."
Yeah,
And he just
absolutely.
sits down with his peers, and they just accept it.
Right. And by the way, just great use of just a known face, even for a small
Mhm.
role. I mean, we saw Anthony Michael Hall as the news anchor this
Dude,
entire
there's
time.
a lot
I
of
haven't talked
people.
about him yet, but he's got a great role in this movie too. Just faces that we knew that Nolan said, I think I'm going to use this guy.
I
So
think my theory, my headcanon was again that everyone wanted to be in this movie.
yeah,
I was like, everybody heard that The Dark Knight was being made by Christopher Nolan. Because again, you had people you hadn't seen in years. Like, I was so happy to see Eric Roberts in here. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Being a fan of the 80s and early 90s movies, Eric Roberts was everywhere. And I'm like, Eric Roberts, Michael Jai White is
yeah, yeah.
getting
Michael
great
Jai White's in it.
like
Absolutely.
he's getting dialogue scenes with Heath Ledger, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. We have,
Zeus,
yeah, we have Nestor Carbonell, who's the mayor, who everyone
yes,
last saw him in Lost. Just a lot of faces that people
it was
knew.
cool. It was very cool.
So midnight hits, and Batman says, "You're alone, buddy. No,
Yeah,
you keep talking about when the chips are down, people will show you who they really are. But guess what? People are better.
yeah.
They're better than you. You're wrong. Now you've realized how alone you truly are." And so you know, he's like, "Oh well, I have a failsafe. They're gonna both die now." And
Yeah.
and before he does it, he makes the mistake of going into a possible third monologue of, "Do you want to know how I got these scars?" And I know, but I know how you got these. And the gauntlet shoots at him
Bam!
and
Throws him off.
subdues him, throws him off. And Joker's laughing the whole way down because it's like, okay,
Yeah,
well, I'll get what I want. I'm gonna die, but
yeah,
everyone's gonna know you're a bad guy now. You
yep. I
know
pushed you. I pushed you. Yep.
exactly. And perhaps a possible shout out to Batman 89 again, where Jack Nicholson flew off the building and Batman, well, not flew off, but he fell off because he was attached to the statue. And, Keaton's Batman killed him,
Yeah.
as Keaton's Batman does many times throughout those
Many
movies.
times.
Yeah, so,
Many times.
but in this instance,
Here's Michael Keaton's Batman face when he kills somebody.
right.
Like he's very happy to do it. Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
absolutely. But of course, Batman saves him,
Mhm.
and it's like, oh, you still can't do it. You still won't do what's necessary, and they have a little interaction here, and he's telling Batman, he's like, no, you're gonna find out. Well, first of all, you and I are destined to do this forever. Great
It's
line.
it's so good. It's so good because Heath Ledger is upside down. And I
Yeah,
love the idea that the camera starts to rotate so that he's right side up to the viewer, but he's upside down doing this whole back and forth.
yeah,
And I love that he's like, you won't kill me because of some feeling of self-righteousness, and I won't kill you because you're just too much fun. And
right,
I love that dynamic that he acknowledged. He was like, you're just fun, like I love doing this with you. And he goes, I think you and I are destined to do this forever. And I love that Batman's like, you're being a padded self forever, and Joker's like, maybe we could share one.
we could
Like Joker
share.
doesn't stop. Like he just keeps going. And it shows you, and there's a great moment because Batman is like, these people just showed you that they're ready to believe in good. And Joker goes, until their spirit breaks completely. Like he doesn't stop.
Right,
And Batman even does, like he sighs and lays his head down. He's like, God, man, just it's over. You
right,
lost. You know what I mean? But then he starts talking about Harvey.
yeah. Right. I just showed everybody, you know, I took down, I was able to corrupt him. And when they see what type of person he is, they're not going to believe in anything anymore, especially you. Um, Talks about
You think
Madden.
I you think I would risk the fight for Gotham's soul in a fist fight with you? Like, no, you gotta have
Yeah,
an ace in a hole, and my ace is Harvey. And I was like, oh,
he
he
was
got
great.
him. He got him.
He says madness is like gravity. All it takes is a little push.
Yes.
A little shout out to the Killing Joke where he says all it takes is
Mhm.
one bad day.
One bad day.
And we've seen that one bad day mimicked many times
Mhm.
throughout film and TV. So I thought that was pretty cool. Um, we shift to Dent, who has now taken Gordon's family hostage. His wife Barbara and his two kids, Jimmy, and the daughter, who is unnamed in the movie, but
Yeah.
us sweaties know that that's Barbara Gordon, who would go
Yeah.
on to become Batgirl one day. You know, unfortunately, we don't see that happen in the Dark Knight trilogy, but
No.
but if you notice, um, Nolan made it a point to show Jimmy many times, but he says, "I'm not going to show Barbara Gordon. I'm not
Mm-mm.
going to show her face,"
Mm-mm.
because he didn't want people unpacking it. He didn't want people,
Yeah, I
talking about
that's what I thought.
Batgirl and
That's what I thought too.
so we're gonna make Jimmy be the one, James Jr., I guess,
Yeah.
um, and that I mean, it was we got a little sweaty here too because a lot of people don't know Barbara was named after her mom. They both have
Mhm.
the name Barbara, so it's pretty cool. But in any case, he's holding the family hostage. He's blaming Gordon as a part of the problem that got Rachel to die. And he's flipping the coin to decide their fates. He decides who gets shot first, and Jimmy, obviously. And just an amazing interaction between everybody here. Um, Batman tackles Dent as he's flipping the coin. Well, an interaction happens where it's like, well, everybody's responsible. He's
Yeah.
like, all right, fine.
It's
Flips.
fair. It's
Yep,
fair.
it's fair. Flips, tails. All right, you got shot, Batman. My turn. Flip.
Yeah.
Okay, I live because it went to heads. And now I'm not gonna kill you, but I'm gonna kill your son to make you suffer. So
It was
we'll flip for Jimmy now. Yeah.
it's such a rough scene because he tells him, he goes, lie, Gordon, lie like I lied. And then Gordon's like, it's gonna be, he goes, tell him it's gonna be okay. Tell him it's gonna be okay. And it's such a heartbreaking scene. And again, this is one of those scenes where Aaron Eckhart, like, again, deserves his flowers because A
Yeah,
lot of people are so caught up in how amazing Heath Ledger and everyone else is in this movie that Aaron Eckhart sometimes gets forgotten. And this scene alone, like the whole movie, he's fantastic, but this scene alone, where he's playing the broken Harvey Dent, who's now associated as Two-Face, is just unbelievable.
right.
And he's and Batman's trying to communicate with him and talk to him, and he goes like, "Well, why is it me? Why am I the one that lost everything?" And Batman's like, "It wasn't like like 'cause he lost
Yeah,
Rachel, but he's not saying it. He's like, he
can't
goes, "It
say it.
wasn't." And he just like, the Joker chose me, and Batman's like, because he chose the best of us, like you were the best, and he wanted to prove that someone as good as you could fall. And Harvey doesn't even fight it. He just says, and he was right. And that's when Batman is just like, well, you're the one pointing the gun, Harvey, so point at the people responsible. And he goes, fair enough, you first. And he shoots him, and he's like, oh. And I do appreciate that he did point it to himself.
Because he's
You know what I
partially
mean?
responsible too, right.
He's like, I'm being fair. And then that very, very, very scary moment where he's just like, he's rubbing his fingers through Jimmy's hair, and he's like, he goes, go ahead, Gordon, tell him, lie. I lied, tell him it's gonna be okay. And I was like, good God, like I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know what's gonna happen here. And then, as you mentioned, we get a tackle
Yeah, he tackled him, and, Harvey falls to his death,
to his death.
because of this tackle, and, Batman falls down too, but he
Mhm.
survives the fall, and, here we go again with that no killing rule. Like,
Yeah.
was it intentional? Was it not? Are we gonna give Batman a pass because it was an accident? We don't know. And it's a lot to process at this point because we had no idea we were gonna see Two-Face in this movie. We thought it was
At
'cause
all.
all the marketing was Joker, you
Joker.
know?
Yep.
And then we're thinking, well, maybe we'll see Two-Face in the 3rd movie. Or if Two-Face is showing up now, then maybe we can still have hope to see him in a 3rd movie, you
Mhm.
know? So in a way, we get another shocking death. Besides
Yeah.
Rachel, Harvey dies too, you know? Um, as you stated, and as I stated, the scene is absolutely amazing. You could see the desperation of Gordon. Gary Oldman, shout out to him,
Oh,
always
dude.
just solid every single time. And then the regret of Batman. He's like, no, I'm responsible too, you know.
Mhm.
But Aaron Eckhart delivers this monologue here. It's not about what I want, it's about what's fair. You thought we could be decent men in an indecent time, but you were wrong. The world is cruel, and the only morality in a cruel world is chance, unbiased, unprejudiced, fair. And he holds
One
up
of
the
my
coin.
favorite monologues, period.
Yeah,
Because
in all the
again,
film, right,
yeah, and period, because it was in that monologue. I mean, we could already understand why he feels as broken as he is, but in his words, you really felt his perspective, because he did everything he thought he could do to be a decent human being
right,
and to do what was right for Gotham, and it got him nothing and nowhere but pain. He lost the love of his life, and on top of that, everything that he fought for is gone.
right,
And it's like, I get it. Like, we see the meme online and the joke, like, oh, this is this person's villain origin story, right? Like, oh,
right.
I burnt the toast is my villain origin story. Like, this made sense, and I really appreciate what Nolan did with Two-Face as a character, where they changed certain aspects about like how he became Two-Face. And usually, you have Two-Face as a dual personality. Here we just have a broken man. Like, we have somebody completely broken. And this scene, Aaron Eckhart, Gary Oldman, everybody, just, it's I've watched this scene sometimes alone. Like, I've gone on YouTube uh every once in a while and just pull up the scene, because I'm
Right.
like, man, this scene is just so good. And like, I have to give everyone in the scene their credit. And to what you were talking about earlier with the death scene, like when it happened, I was like, okay, clearly this wasn't a Batman, like, I'm gonna kill this guy. You know
Right.
what I mean? It was a very, very desperate attempt to save this kid's life, and he did. I don't think he intended to call Harvey. I do not think that
No,
was
of
the
course
plan.
not.
But all he's thinking is get this guy away from this kid, and he falls to his death. So again, there's a gray area. It
Right.
wasn't an intentional kill, but Harvey does die as a result of the
Right.
fall.
Like in Batman Begins, when the original Ross dies,
Mhm.
it wasn't Bruce that did it. It was a log from the cabin or whatever
Yeah.
housing, when it was burning, it fell down on Ken Watanabe's character.
Mhm.
Um, and then at the ending, though, he didn't kill Ducard or the real Raish Ross. he, but I won't save you, So here
I won't save
it's
it.
just
Yeah.
a gray
It
line,
gets gray. It gets a little gray.
Yeah. So they both agree that Dent is still the hero, even though all this stuff happened.
Mhm.
So Batman decides to take the blame for the death of Dent and all of the people that Dent killed. And he convinces Gordon to go along with this plan. We're starting to wrap up the movie now, and a lot's happening here. Alfred burns the letter to Bruce because he knows it would crush Bruce to know that Rachel was going to choose Harvey. Fox ends up destroying the surveillance network because he said, "I can't be a part of this." So
Well, it's Bruce, right? Like Bruce destroys it, right? Wasn't like I thought the way I thought when he put his name in, that was the activation code to destroy it. And am I looking too deep into it? Because I thought it was a fail safe. Because when he goes, when you're done, type in your name, and then Lucius types in his name, and then
right.
everything starts to tick, 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 tick.
Yeah. Lucius did it. Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
like it was Bruce's failsafe, right? Like by him putting his name in, it destroyed it, right? Like,
correct.
okay, yeah, okay,
Yeah, by him putting his name in it, right.
yeah,
He put the network in the hands of Lucius. Yeah,
yeah,
and
and it's like,
absolutely.
boom, okay,
Um and the city's starting to mourn Dent, and then now they're gonna a manhunt to find Batman because he's responsible for everything. Um a lot happens in these closing moments here.
oh yeah,
We're gonna protect Dent even after everything that he did. Um Lucius is like, I'm done now. He's leaving. Okay, what's gonna happen there? Alfred burns the envelope. That's not going to be the last we hear about that.
yeah.
The Batman signal is destroyed. Batman is now being hunted. And then Gary Oldman gives, the closing line of the movie. Because Jimmy asks, like, why are you going to hunt him? Why? Why are you doing this? And it's like, well, he's the hero Gotham deserves, but not the one it needs right now. So we'll hunt him because he can take it. Because he's not our hero. He's a silent guardian, a watchful protector, a dark knight. Let me get the credits there.
Doom,
Um,
doom, doom,
you know,
doom, doom, doom.
and
Oh my god,
and you could pick and choose, but Nolan does that old trope of saying the name of the movie in the movie a
I
few
like it.
times in his career.
I like it.
It's been parodied many times over the years if somebody's going to say the
Yes.
name, in a show or movie, but pretty
He
funny.
said it. He said
Right?
it. He
He said
said
it.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the movie that
Oh,
we just went through a breakdown that we took our time with here because we needed to.
bro.
I saw this at a midnight showing the first time it came out.
Same.
I would go on to see it many times that weekend, multiple times. Um, I wasn't alone.
Mhm.
The budget for this movie was 185 million,
Oh yeah,
and The Dark Knight would go on to make over $1 billion
bro.
worldwide. And by the
This
way, Nolan made this for 185 million, not a plus $200 million budget.
That's
Yeah,
insane. Again, with the amount of people that are in this movie, the amount of people that want to be in this movie, the sets, the practicality, everything else, the budgeting of the promoting the film, etc. Like everything that comes into place, and 185 million, and you pulled over $1 billion.
right.
Absolutely mind blowing.
Absolutely. So I'm going to let you talk a little bit. What were your initial thoughts the first time you saw this movie? Before you go, I want to let you know I was blown away. Um, to me, I was recency biased, but to me, it was the best Batman movie I'd ever seen.
Mhm.
And in my mind, I was going through how many superhero movies have I seen that I liked as much, but because Batman's my favorite hero, so now I'm like, man, I just saw something really special. I went to
Yeah.
see him multiple times that weekend and went on to continue breaking, records and such. So, Ricardo, please, if you could give us your thoughts, just that opening weekend.
Like you, I saw it at a midnight screening, and I remember it's no secret that I thought Batman Begins is a masterpiece, and I absolutely adored it. And I was already like, well, I don't know how you surpass that. I don't even know how you're able to nail Batman Begins again. It was just phenomenal. And I remember watching this, and throughout the movie there were moments where I was just like, I was like, I feel like I'm watching something special. This is raising the bar. This felt different. The acting, as we mentioned, the interrogation scene alone, when that scene hit, I was like, dude, we're watching something special here. But in those final closing monologue, where you have Gordon given the final lines, and a silent protector, a Dark Knight, and it hits right to credit. I felt like it was like a hit to the stomach, man.
Right.
Like it just felt like, whoa, what did I watch? And in that moment, like usually you can walk away from a movie and you think about it on the drive home, you're talking with your friends or whatnot. You can't wait to interact with people the next day and talk about it. But I remember instantly walking out and going, okay, that was what we like to have fun and say today. That was cinema. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I walked out thinking, I can't wait to go back. And I saw it 3 times in theaters. I saw it 3 times in theaters. I went with different people each time. I got to go with my dad one time and like, you gotta see this movie. You know what I mean? And just appreciating it. But it was Batman Begins, um, like on steroids, because it had the same feel, it had the same tone, but it just seemed like they stepped up in every aspect of the movie. And I remember going, oh man, I remember like talking to people who weren't necessarily into comic book films or what many people would be considered a sweaty, and talking about like the
Huh.
Dark Knight's the greatest movie I ever saw. And I was like,
Right.
right? Like it was just it was wild how I felt like the word of mouth with this movie was just epic. Like everybody was talking about it, everybody was going to see it. I knew so many people who saw it more than once. And I remember again just walking out of that movie so excited about what could come next, because I was like, all right, we got Batman Begins, we got The Dark Knight, we're definitely going to get some more. Like there's no way that this franchise doesn't continue. And just at the time, I remember like I was worried about Heath Ledger in the role because I was much younger at the time. So at the time, I was like, oh, like Heath Ledger's playing Joker. And then like throughout that entire movie, I was just like, this is one of the greatest performances I've ever seen in my life. And to this day, it still stands. And I remember walking out of that movie experience and just being like, wow, that Heath Ledger Joker, that Heath Ledger Joker, that Heath Ledger Joker. And then the amazing surprise of Aaron Eckhart's performance as Harvey Dent and as Two-Face at the end. It was almost like overstimulation. Like there was so much that I was thinking about in my mind as I was exiting the theater and just couldn't wait to communicate about it with people. But I think right away, walking out, I knew that we saw something special, and I was just elated. I couldn't wait to see it again.
The Dark Knight ended up breaking some records as far as the box office. It ended up, let's take a look here. It had highest grossing single day at 67.2 million on a Friday. This is all at the time, 2008. Sunday, 43.6 million. It made midnight 18.5 million. That was a record. And it would go on to have the best opening week of all time at 238.6 million. It ended up making more than $1 billion, ended up being the highest grossing superhero film of all time. And then only the fourth film to make $1 billion, behind Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, and Titanic. So at the time, The Dark Knight was just breaking records left and right financially. It was also making history in the awards. It was nominated for 8 Academy Awards.
Oh yeah.
And obviously, Heath Ledger won the Best Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. That win ended up being the first time a comic book adaptation won an Academy Award ever. It also won Best Award for Sound Editing. And then the 6 other nominations were Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, Best Makeup, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Visual Effects. It was not nominated for Best Screenplay. I'm assuming it would fall into adaptation or original. I don't know where it would fall into.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it would fall into either one of those.
Yeah.
Maybe adaptation since Batman's a character,
Yeah, maybe, because I think Logan was best adapted screenplay, if
Okay,
I'm not
fair.
mistaken. So I think that probably would have fallen under that as well.
No Best Director nomination for Christopher Nolan.
BS.
Correct. And then no Best Picture nomination, because at the time, there was only 5 nominations for Best Picture.
Mhm.
The very following year, they expanded it to 10, and this is known as the Dark Knight rule
Yes.
because everybody, fans, critics, and people in the industry alike said the Academy got it wrong that it deserved a nomination.
Yep. Yep. It should have absolutely been nominated for Best Picture. And the fact that The Dark Knight made that much of an impact in pop culture amongst fans, amongst critics,
Right.
people within the within Hollywood and whatnot, for them to be as vocal as they were was just a testament to how amazing that film was. And we'll always be able to say, like, we have 10 spots now because of The Dark Knight. It changed the game on the biggest. When it comes to movies, there's nothing bigger than the Oscars.
Right.
And the fact that a comic book film like Christopher Nolan about Batman was the movie that was going to change the game forever with the Oscars.
And just a note here, I looked it up. The year that those Oscars happened, where The Dark Knight would have been nominated, the other nominations were The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Frost Nixon, Milk, The Reader, and then the winner, which was Slumdog Millionaire.
Mhm.
Um, any one of those movies could have been replaced by The Dark Knight, and I wouldn't be mad about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those all were all great movies in their own right.
Mhm.
Any one of them got replaced. Maybe Slumdog Millionaire, maybe not, because that's the one that actually won, and that was a great movie. But
Yeah.
um, my theory is that the Academy didn't want to nominate The Dark Knight. 2 reasons: one, because it was a genre movie,
Yeah, I think that was
superhero
one,
comic
yeah.
book movie. But 2, if they didn't give it the win, people would have they would have went off even more, because
Yeah.
clearly it should have won.
Yeah,
If
I think
it got nominated and lost, people would be just like looking around going, "Excuse me?" You know?
yeah, I think it they didn't wanna put themselves in a corner one way or another. They didn't w I think one of the biggest ones was obviously it was a genre film, it was a comic book movie, and now we see it happen again, and every time it happens, I'm always like, "Thank the Dark Knight for allowing this to happen."
Right,
But I think that they didn't wanna I don't think they wanted a comic book, genre film, and if they did, like you said, if it didn't win, I don't think they wanted to deal with that type of
right,
blowback. I'm like, "Oh, how could The Dark Knight, be nominated and not win amongst these other when it was obviously that good of a film?" And
right,
everyone are like, just I
right,
mean,
and
Joker got the Oscar, like, it just
right,
tells you what type of performances were in this movie.
right, and at the end of the day, I mean, to me, okay, fine, it gets nominated and loses, but at least you give it the respect that it deserved by
Yes.
being nominated, you know?
Yes.
So, um, this movie gets compared to Michael Mann's Heat a lot, and I've
Okay.
seen Heat. Um,
Yes.
I can see the comparisons, but I feel like The Dark Knight's, it's in a class all its own. All the respect in the world to Michael Mann's Heat with Pacino and De Niro, but, The Dark Knight, it's in a class all its own. I'll accept that maybe the influence there, but they're not the same movie, absolutely not.
No, no, I love Heat. I absolutely love Heat. I think it's
Right,
one of the better movies. And I can see some of the parallels if you want. Like I can see that scene where De Niro and Pacino are sitting across from one another, and they're having that conversation about how things are going to go, and they're just sitting at the table. I can see a parallel where it's like, hey, you have your antagonist and protagonist just sitting across from one another, just having an amazing acting experience. I could see that, but yeah, the movies are vastly different in every aspect of the word. I love both movies, but yeah, like I wouldn't even think of even making a comparison.
right.
But yeah, that's me.
So, there's a little theory. We're just doing little tidbits here, little tidbits, but
Ooh, ooh, I like theories because I got one too.
yeah, there's a theory here about the Joker.
Ooh, that's the one.
Yeah, 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 and who he is. So, he has a line in the movie, um, where it says, "You know what I've noticed? Nobody panics when things go according to plan, even if the plan is horrifying. If tomorrow I tell the press that like a gangbanger will get shot or a truckload of soldiers will blow up, nobody panics because it's all part of the plan." And from that one line about the truck soldiers getting blown up, people have theorized that the Joker is a war vet.
Yeah.
And maybe that's how he got his scars. He knows how to
Hmm.
fight. He knows how to use all this tech. He knows how to couple, drums of gasoline, you know, he knows how to do these things. And I thought that was a pretty cool theory. And obviously we'll never know because he did the story about how I got these scars each time.
Yeah.
So that's so funny. We were both thinking about that at the same time.
Yes, it's one of my favorite theories, and it was one of those that, like, I didn't think of it, and when I read it, I was like, "Ooh, I actually really like that," because again, the idea that he's also against the established order,
Right.
and the idea of a soldier is like, "Hey, man, like, the government tells you what to do, you go do it." Like, it's that order, like, you have to do it, and it seems like he wanted to introduce chaos after experiencing war and whatnot, and, like, the scars on his face, I was like, "Oh, what if, like, there was an explosion, and there's metal, there's shrapnel, and it cuts his face." Um, he's a weapons technician. He has a variety of weapons throughout this film, military grade weapons. He knows how to create explosives, devices, triggers. He is good at interrogation, psychological warfare. Because like it's a throwaway joke, but when Batman comes into the room and he hits his head first, he goes, "You never want to start with the head, because then the victim gets all fuzzy. He can't feel the next thing." And he hits his hand. He's like, "See?" And I was like, "Oh man, could you imagine if that was a part of his thing? Was he interrogated people and he understands like you never want to start with the head because then there's nowhere to really go from there. You want to work your way up." And there's just little aspects of that where he's great at planning. Again, like I love that he always tries to throw people off his trail. And one of those times is when he says, "I don't come up with plans." Like he goes, "I'm not a planner. Like I don't know. Do I look like a guy with a plan?" But throughout the entire movie, Joker has had nothing but plans, and they've all worked. You got the bank heist, you got the going after Harvey, the stuff with the guards in the building where he's like, "Hey, we're gonna dress the guards up as the patients, or no, we're going to dress the doctors up as the criminals, we're going to flip them out." Like he's got a plan for everything. He's a great technician, a tactical person. So when I heard that and read that theory, I was like, that could fit. Will we ever know? Absolutely not. It's always going to be ambiguous who he was prior. But those are just some variables that when I was reading, I was like, you know what? If someone wanted to walk away from this movie believing that, I'd be like, you have every right in the world to believe that, man, because I can totally see it fitting. It fits really well. I'm like, oh, I can go with that.
And as we know, Heath Ledger tragically died before the movie was released.
Hmm.
Um, without going too much into it, it was possible type of an accidental drug overdose,
Yeah.
and it's been speculated that he died because he got lost in the role,
Hmm.
and people say that he went into too dark of a place. He already had a child with Michelle Williams, um, so and then I believe that things were falling apart between him and Michelle Williams and such, and so people went into speculation about why he died, why he turned to the drugs, why whole bunch of stuff going on, just speculation. And there's a really great interview, if you can find it, where Michael Jai White talks about The Dark Knight and his experience. And he says that he believes that all that stuff about Heath Ledger losing his mind, he said it was nonsense. He said that Heath Ledger was an absolute professional on set,
Hmm.
that he was not a method actor where he was the Joker
Yes.
all the time. And that was
Yes.
great. And I'm loving to, and don't get me wrong, I respect the method. I think method
Hmm.
acting is amazing, but sometimes you got to be a person too. You're
Yeah.
not going to walk around being in character all day and then your fellow co stars are going to want to work with you again.
Yeah.
So, he said
I
that in between takes, he was joking. And,
Yes.
um, we know the story. I believe Heath Ledger rented the hotel room for about a month. It was 30
Hmm.
days and he was alone. So that story got hyped and it snowballed into Heath Ledger lost his mind. And this was the downward spiral that happened to him. But, people like Michael Jai White, and there were other people that spoke out against
Yeah,
this.
there was quite a few crew members that I read a couple interviews, and there's photos, like, they shared photos of them
Yeah,
with Heath in the makeup, and it's really nice because when you hear all those rumors and you're like, "Oh, man, that sounds so horrific that he
right,
had to stay locked in like that," and then I saw these photos of him in the makeup smiling with crew members,
right.
and I'm reading these interviews, and they said that, when he's in the scene, he's in the scene. It said, but he was such a delight and he was fun and he was
Yeah,
making jokes and he was open. He wasn't shy to take photos with people. He said they talked about how some people were intimidated. They didn't want to really go up to him. He made them feel warm.
right.
And I loved reading those stories because like you said in the beginning, everyone kind of latched onto this very, very, very like negative image of who Heath Ledger was. And I liked when Michael spoke up, and I like when other crew members spoke up and said, no, he was a professional and he was a delight on set. He did not stay in character. And he made it fun for people. And I like to have that to remember when I think about Heath Ledger as a Dark Knight. I try not to think of the tragedy as much, but just how great he was on set with everyone else around him. And I thought that was really, really, really nice to hear.
Let's just briefly go through this cast here, and just give each person their due here. We have Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne and Batman.
Yeah.
We have Michael Caine as Alfred, Gary Oldman as Jim Gordon, Aaron Eckhart as Harvey Dent Two-Face, Maggie Gyllenhaal as Rachel Dawes, Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox, and of course Heath Ledger as Joker. Um, for me, it goes without saying that obviously Heath Ledger is the standout of this movie.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
you know, one of the greatest um, excuse me, the greatest performance of the 21st century, some people say, and
Oh
then
yeah.
one of the greatest performances of all time. Hands down, the greatest superhero comic book adaptation
Yeah.
performance. But
100%.
you touched on it earlier. If Aaron Eckhart wasn't in this movie with Heath Ledger, he may have gotten more credit too, because
Mhm.
this is Aaron Eckhart's best performance in my opinion. Great actor
Yes.
in his own right. I thought his career would have taken off a little bit more after this, but it didn't
Mhm.
quite go that way. But perfectly cast. If you've ever seen Thank You for Smoking, you could see a little bit of the Harvey character in that role. But for me, those two roles are the standout. Some people say they like Aaron Eckhart more, you know,
Mhm.
but we talk about this all the time. Some people, when a cast just gels, they start feeding off of each other.
Yeah.
And Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman, they're legends, you know. But when they're sharing scenes with certain people, you could see these people feeding off of each other. Rachel Dawes, Aaron Eckhart, um, Christian Bale. You see people just feeding off of each other. So that was like my main takeaway from this cast. Like, as they were making this movie, you can kind of tell they were doing something really special.
You could feel the chemistry because what I love about acting too is when you're working with someone, you call them your partner. They're my scene partner, they're my partner, we're in this together. And you can feel that chemistry and that bond between these actors on set when they're working with one another, where you can feel it across the screen. Like you said, you can feel that they're making something special, and that they have to feel it as well. Aaron Eckhart, I just it's it's a little unfortunate because again, he's giving arguably his greatest performance to date. He's giving a
Right.
wonderful performance, but everyone is so just blown away at how transformative Heath Ledger was.
Right.
Because he's under prosthetics and makeup, his voice changed, his mannerisms, his body language. Again, one of my favorite things about this movie was the teaser trailer that came out. And the teaser trailer didn't show any imagery. It was just ADR, it was just voiceover, the Batman
Yeah.
logo. And I remember hearing Heath Ledger's Joker and being in awe and going, who was that? That wasn't Heath. And they're like, I'm like, that's not Heath. That sounds nothing like Heath. So he's so transformative in the role, and it's arguably the best role in the movie, that it's easy to kind of overlook other great performances in the film. And Aaron Eckhart, unfortunately, he suffers because of that, where a lot of people walk away and go, oh my God, Heath Ledger. I know people who say that the Dark Knight is only as highly revered as it is because of Heath Ledger's Joker. They're like, oh, the Dark Knight's great, But what pushes it above and beyond is Heath Ledger's Joker performance. They're like,
Right.
that's what does it. So many people argue on that. And I love having conversations with anybody who can sit there and give flowers to Aaron Eckhart as well, because one, we had no idea Two-Face was going to be in the movie. We had no idea what type of role Harvey Dent was going to have in this movie. And Aaron Eckhart does a magnificent job of the duality throughout the film, where he plays Harvey Dent, the White Knight, right? And then by the end of the movie, just completely broken and torn in two, no pun intended, and just delivering an amazing closing scenes with Gary Oldman, Christian Bale. Again, all these guys are powerhouse actors,
Right.
and none of them is making anyone else look bad. Like, they're all bringing their A game, and the whole cast does a great job. But I love Aaron Eckhart, so I'm always going to try my best to scream for him the loudest in this movie, because I feel like, again, Michael Caine is a legend. Morgan Freeman, Maggie Gyllenhaal is a terrific performer. She does a lot of indie films and some big films like this every once in a while, but she's mainly known for like indie and whatnot. Gary Oldman, come on, the guy's a chameleon.
Oldman, man.
Christian
Yeah.
Bale, like, you got all these talent, and in the middle of that, you got Aaron Eckhart, who's just killing it, but it's
Right.
easy for people to overlook sometimes. So I want people to always remember, hey, he was an excellent Two-Face, amazing performance throughout.
And it's a shame about Katie Holmes not being able to come back and do this. The
Mhm.
story is that there was a conflict with her doing the movie Mad Money,
Yeah,
and because I would like to think there's no way she would not come back for this.
yeah,
You
I agree.
know, after reading this script, how would you not? Or after working with Nolan once, how would you not? So
Mhm.
apparently things were tied up, and one has to wonder what direction her career would have went in had she been able to come back and
Yeah.
do this movie. And a lot of people say that, oh, well, Maggie Gyllenhaal is a better actor. It worked out better. It's like, well, you don't know that though, because you don't know, Maggie Gyllenhaal is a great actor,
Mhm.
absolutely. But you don't know what Katie Holmes would have given us if she was in a scene with Aaron Eckhart or with all these other people,
Yep.
sharing more, and you just, some things just feel special. You don't know. So it's a big what if for me. What would have happened had Katie Holmes come back? And people talk about her being one of the weakest parts of the Dark Knight trilogy, but for me, I trust Nolan, and Nolan we
Yeah,
trust.
yeah,
We say it all the
yeah.
time. He saw something in her and he wanted her to play Rachel, and maybe she didn't quite get her footing in the first movie, but after seeing this material, there's no way I believe she would not have been able to get her footing had she been able to continue playing Rachel.
Yeah, I've actually heard that argument as well. I've heard people say, "Oh, well, Maggie's the better actor." I've definitely heard that argument
Right.
where people say like, "Oh, well, Keenan's come back." Well, it's okay because they got a better actor. And like you said, there's no way for us to really know. I think they're both great actors, and it's always interesting to see how two different people take a script and make certain choices to make the words reflect the character the way they see the characters.
Right.
And who knows, Katie Holmes could have came in here and completely changed people's minds on how they perceive her as an actor. Working with these, like Katie Holmes working with Heath Ledger, Katie Holmes again working with Bale, Nolan again, Nolan who has now worked with her and Begins and knows what her strengths are, knows what he can do and what he can utilize and whatnot. Again, he chose her for a reason. And we've talked about this. Anytime someone gets cast in a Nolan movie, we're like, okay, Nolan sees something. Let's see where we go from here. And I've never been disappointed in any of his casting choices. So it's always been great. So I'm curious. And like you said, it's a nice what if to wonder what it would have been like to see Katie Holmes return. I loved Maggie Gyllenhaal. I thought she was great.
Oh, she was great.
Thought she was great. Thought she was fantastic in the role. But like you're always like, oh, it was a recast. I wonder what it would have been
Right.
like. You know what I mean? But
One
she made a choice and schedule wise and what was the movie? I'm sorry,
Mad Money. It was like a
Mad
comedy.
Money. Yeah, Mad
Yeah.
Money. So I and yeah, like you Mad Money versus The Dark Knight, but hey, things happen.
Right. Um, Heath Ledger, obviously, we've said this. He went on to win the Academy Award, the Oscar,
Mhm.
in death. He had already been nominated. He won Best Supporting Actor. He already had been nominated for Best Actor for Brokeback Mountain. And
Excellent movie. My goodness.
once again, this is just another story that just continues being rehashed. There was such a backlash to him
Yeah.
getting announced to playing the
Pet
Joker because he'd been
petitions, man.
right, he'd been in teen comedies, rom-coms,
Mhm.
things like that. And then Brokeback was the only um drama he'd been in, but just with the toxicity concerning, some of the fans, it's like, "Oh, well, you went and got a gay cowboy to play Joker,"
I saw
and
that. I've seen
people
that.
just missed the point completely at that point. So,
Mhm.
obviously, he went ahead and proved everybody wrong and then some. We talk about it now. One of the greatest performances for me, that's a bold statement, the greatest performance of the 21st century and one of the greatest performances of all time. I kinda
Yes,
agree I kinda agree with those statements.
I do.
He
I do.
absolutely earns it, and, people say that this movie wouldn't be as great if it wouldn't be as revered if Heath didn't die, and I think that's an insult to the man's memory.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't like that at
he
all.
gave an incredible performance, and whether he lived or died after this movie happened, it's there's did it create some mystique around the movie? Absolutely. But don't sit there and tell me that the movie wouldn't have been as good if he didn't die. Like, what a disrespectful thing to say.
It is because it's irrelevant. It's completely
Right.
irrelevant because it doesn't affect how the world viewed his performance at all. And
Right.
nobody left that movie thinking, "Wow, that's a great performance." But, I think I appreciate it more because he's no longer with us. I don't
Right.
think that was the case. I think ironically enough, when people like when you're watching the movie, you kind of forget because you're so enthralled in the
Right.
movie and in the character. You're not sitting there thinking this actor is no longer with us, unfortunately. You're in awe at the performance that he's given. And I've seen that argument as well. And I think it's tasteless. I don't
Right.
appreciate it whatsoever. And I remember the backlash. And I remember when they announced him, I was like, "Really? That's the guy?" And I there was no toxicity behind it. I was just like, "Really?" Like, and again, I was very young, and I was like,
Right.
"That guy?" And I was like, "Heath Ledger?" And I was thinking 10 Things I Hate About You
Right.
and like things like that. And I was like, "He's gonna play the Joker?" And I kept trying to hear his voice, and that's what I was like, "How's his laugh gonna be?" And I remember going, "All right, I'll wait." Yeah,
Right.
but I remember seeing petitions
Yeah.
and like, "That's ridiculous." And then I again from the teaser, I didn't even see him from the teaser. I was just like in awe at how transformative his voice was.
Right.
And then seeing him on screen, I was like, yo, like you said, I personally believe it's the greatest comic book performance of all time. I don't
Right.
think there's anybody that comes even remotely close. I mean, there's been some great performances. I don't want to make it seem like there's no other ones, but Heath Ledger's performance as Joker is synonymous with just absolute amazing acting. Um, so anytime someone says like, "Oh, well, because he passed away or this," I'm like, "No, no, no, like I'll cut that off real quick." I'm like, "We're
Yeah.
not gonna do that. We're not gonna
Yeah.
do that."
And it's definitely up there, and we say the 21st century, like since 2000, there's not many performances that stand up, you
Yeah.
know, that you would say that are possibly better. I mean, I think about like Natalie Portman in Black
Mhm.
Swan.
Yep.
Um, I think about, well, here we go, Brendan Fraser in The Whale. That's
In
more
the whale.
recent. That's more
Mhm.
recent, but you know, you could line up whatever performance you want. I'm still gonna pick Heath Ledger's Joker as the
Yeah.
best performance of the 21st century, and maybe that'll be a list for us one day. We can go through the
Yeah.
best performances of the 21st century
Yeah.
and see
Yeah.
where, see if Heath does make the top of the list. You never know.
Yeah, because like for me, like when it comes to like best performances, I've always appreciated the performances that were super transformative, right? Like
Right,
the ones where I don't see the actor, the ones where I feel like there's someone that's not them. Like again, I kept saying I don't see Heath Ledger, right?
correct.
Like perfect example, the Grinch with Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey's under so much prosthetics, right? But there are moments where I can see Jim, like I see Jim Carrey, and he's covered in layers of makeup and hair and contacts. And there's still moments where I'm like, "Ah, I see Jim. I see Jim.
Right,
I never saw Heath." And it was scary. I also think it's one of the scariest performances because again, I remember for the first time I was like, I feel uncomfortable because the performance is so eerie. Because it's one of the only times and very few times, especially at that age, we're talking about 2008, where I had seen someone with a very recognizable face that I've seen in numerous movies time and time again, where I'm watching it and going, I don't see him anymore. Like he's completely transformed into this character. So like I always think of great performances like that. Like many people would argue that Denzel Washington winning for Training Day. They were like, "Oh, why he had to win it for such a bad guy role?" And I'm like, to
right,
me, I was like, "Well, it was one of his most transformative roles where I didn't see Denzel anymore. I saw this terrible human being." So when I see Heath Ledger completely vanish into the role, it's easy for me to sit there and say, of course, this is one of the greatest performances of the 21st century, let alone any comic book movie, because I don't see Heath anymore. And that's not easy to do, to just disappear like that, even though we can see your face and just not be there.
Right. So at this point, we usually go into notable lines and we do some scene study sometimes, but we made the decision that we're not going to do that because this is probably not the last time we're going to discuss The Dark Knight. So
Yeah.
we want to leave a little something for later on, and also we kind of want to let's leave those lines alone for a second. We'll come back to them eventually.
Mhm.
Let's show some respect to Heath Ledger since he did pass away, and then maybe you know either myself or Ricardo would love to give you some delivery and how we would do it. But let's,
Yeah, it can't be
yeah,
the same, I'll tell you that.
right.
It
It
can't.
can't be the same. So,
I've seen so many people. This used to bother me. This actually used to bother me. Where, like I said, it's one of the most duplicated and copied scenes on YouTube,
right,
where people would do the Heath Ledger's Joker and they would just do it exactly like Heath Ledger. I'm like, just
right.
don't do that. Don't do that. You want to
Yeah,
know why? Because he did it perfectly. Don't do it like him.
correct.
Make it your own. Make it your own. Change up the words, change the mannerisms. But everybody was just so like impressed with his performance that they wanted to duplicate as much as possible. And I'm like, do a little bit different. Do a little bit
Right.
different. You're doing an
Exactly.
audition for somebody, do a little bit different.
Right. So, maybe the next time we talk about The Dark Knight, we'll give you a little scene study, but not for today because us obviously it was our first time doing the movie, so we knew we wanted to go into the breakdown and discussing the movie and such. So that's not why
Oh
we're
yeah.
doing it.
Oh
Having
yeah.
said that, we're going to start wrapping things up. And let's just get some bold statements out of the way as we're
Okay.
wrapping up here, and
Okay.
let's see if we agree or disagree on these bold statements. So,
All right.
um, The Dark Knight is hailed as the greatest superhero movie of all time to many people, and it may or may not have been said at the time in 2008. As of this recording, it's 2023, and we're not asking people if this is their favorite superhero movie, but if you believe this is the greatest superhero movie of all time. I have gone on record saying this many times. So, yes, I, Anderson Marchak, proclaim that The Dark Knight is the greatest superhero movie of all time. Ricardo, how do you feel?
I'll be real with you. Like you said, I've got personal favorites. I've got movies that
Right,
I have a crazy love for, movies that are my number one, number two. Do people go, really? That's your number one? I'm like, yeah, man, because it does something for me. But in my opinion, and I say it with my chest, I have no fear
there we
whatsoever.
go.
I think The Dark Knight is the greatest comic book film of all time. I haven't walked out of a superhero movie as changed as I was when it comes to the genre and viewing comic movies in such a way like I have with The Dark Knight. From performances, from story, from execution, everything else. And look, I've expressed my love for movies like Man of Steel, Zack Snyder's Justice League,
Right,
Watchmen, Batman Begins. The list can go on and on with amazing comic films that I love and adore. But in my opinion, in my head, it's not an opinion. In my head, it's fact, just plain
right.
fact.
I mean,
That I'm like,
I,
it's the
right,
greatest comic film of
right.
all
And I
time.
can help you there. Superman the movie, 78,
Yeah,
Batman
yeah.
89, I know you love
Love these movies.
Batman
Love these
Returns.
movies.
Let's give a love to the MCU, The Winter Soldier,
Winter Soldier, man.
you
Like,
know,
love these
Logan,
movies.
we can keep going and going, but um, the Dark Knight's still being hailed as the greatest, and that can lead into
Yeah.
our next, statement here. Something to support the statement is that time and time again, after every superhero movie comes out, what's the go-to line? They say, "This is the best superhero movie since The Dark Knight," and
Yup.
if something else was the greatest superhero movie, don't you think they would say since that movie or the movie at the time?
Yeah.
When Avengers came out, this is the best superhero movie since The Dark Knight. Okay. Then we heard it again for The Winter Soldier. We heard it
Mhm.
again for Deadpool. We heard it again for um, Days of Future Past. I don't
Yep.
have them in front of me, but I recall hearing it time and time again.
Bro,
Logan,
we just heard it for The Flash on
Flash.
advanced
Yeah.
screenings
Hasn't
where
even been
people
released yet. Yeah.
it hasn't even been released. Early critics were like, "It's the best DC movie since The Dark Knight," and I was
Right.
like,
Exactly.
"Wow."
It was said for Logan.
Mhm.
Um, we could just keep going down the list. I think whatever movie came out, Spider-Man: No Way Home. It's the best superhero
Yep.
movie since The Dark Knight, and that was
The
a
Dark
great movie,
Knight.
by the way. I enjoyed that
Yeah.
movie. Both Infinity War,
Yep.
Endgame, every single time, and it's like, if The Dark Knight isn't objectively the greatest superhero movie of all time, then why do critics keep going back to it whenever a
Yeah.
new movie comes out? Why don't we just say, well, it's the best superhero movie since Avengers? It's
Yeah.
the best superhero movie since Spider-Man 2. There we go. There's another one, Spider-Man 2,
Yeah.
Um, they always go back to The Dark Knight. You can have your favorite. You can
Yeah.
absolutely have your personal favorite, but objectively, which is the greatest one? And this is the one that it keeps coming back to. Um, as of this recording, it is May 2023. So it's been 15 years since The Dark Knight came out.
Mhm.
And here we go with another bold statement. I now believe The Dark Knight has reached legendary status since it has been 15 years. And
Yeah.
because we keep getting this comparison of the greatest superhero movie since The Dark Knight, um, how do you feel about that, Ricardo? As far as calling The Dark Knight it's definitely iconic, but now we're talking about a legendary movie.
I think it fits that bill, and I think it fits that bill because there, like, again, it is continuously being considered the bar, and
Right.
that's being done for a reason. Again, we've had since 2008 and 2023, we have had almost an endless amount of comic book films come out, whether they're DC, whether they're Marvel, whether they're off-brand comics. You know what I mean? Like those types of movies have been made nonstop over the last 15 years or so. And the idea that The Dark Knight remains the bar is done for a reason because its effect it had on pop culture, the effect that it had on film in general and comic book films. It was one of the first times where one of the very few times where, again, I've said it before and I'll say it, where it surpassed the genre of a comic
Right.
book movie. Where I remember just talking to people who thought comic books were dorky, nerdy, not into that,
Right.
too popular for that, whatever. Going, did you see The Dark Knight? Did you see that Batman movie? You know what I mean? So I think like if you were able to lock one movie into a vault and you said out of all the comic movies, there's one you can lock into a vault, it would be hard for me to believe that The Dark Knight wouldn't be that movie. That
Right.
when you go to the museums, like if you go to the museums in Washington, D.C. and whatnot, they have like Superman, they have the costume, they have the suit, they have things like that. I feel like The Dark Knight has that appeal of legendary status. Enough time has passed. It has changed the landscape of film. Like The Matrix, there were like with Matrix, there were movies before Matrix and movies after. When
Correct.
it comes to The Dark Knight, there were comic book movies before The Dark Knight and there were comic movies after The Dark Knight. And I feel like Batman Begins kind of like opened the door. It was like, listen, look what we can do with comic book films. That people were like, okay, I'm intrigued. That Batman Begins, that was really good. And then The Dark Knight kicked the door off the hinges. Like it just said, this is what we are. So I would absolutely agree with that. And that's not me agreeing with you to agree with you. That's me agreeing with you because I think it's fact. I'm like, no, 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 that's legendary status. Like
Yeah.
everyone and their mom knows The Dark Knight. Like, come on now, get out of here.
Yeah, we're about to hit the 15 we this year's the 15-year anniversary, and before you know it'll be 20 years and we'll still be hearing the best superhero movie since The Dark Knight. So that's something to
Absolutely.
take into consideration. In the line Joker says to Batman, I have this down here, you've changed things forever. And I've
Hmm.
seen a meme where it's, well, Nolan, you've changed things forever. And that's how I feel. Um, I've gone on record saying this is my favorite superhero movie and that this is my favorite movie. And we do plan on doing a top 10 of all time. And more than likely, it's going to be my favorite movie, obviously.
Ooh.
More than likely, I've said it enough times. It's not a spoiler.
Mhm.
That is what it is. Um, but I'd like to hear your opinion, Ricardo. Do you think this movie's making your top 10?
Oh, easily. Easily top 10.
Yeah.
I don't even have
Maybe
to
even
think
top
about that.
five, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Maybe.
for sure,
Oh, there we go.
for sure.
So
I
this
think
so
I think the last time I updated my list, it was definitely top 5. I
Yeah,
think so.
so not a bold statement. The Dark Knight one of your favorite movies ever, not just
Yeah,
one of your favorite superhero movies ever,
without a doubt,
but one of your
it
favorite
surpasses
movies ever, period.
it surpasses the genre. Unbelievable performances, amazing scope,
Right.
a great atmosphere, just a thrill ride from beginning to end, and it's comic book. That's amazing to me. But again, I feel like Nolan pushed it, man. I feel like he pushed it. He
Yeah.
pushed the genre, and he gave us something truly special that will stand the test of time. And again, there are movies that I think for anybody who studies film, for anybody who studies acting, that when you go through history and you watch movies from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, there are going to be many people that when they get to that 2000 era, that the Dark Knight is an
Yeah.
absolute must watch for anybody who studies film, without a shadow of a doubt.
Absolutely. I'm just gonna give some closing thoughts here. We have talked a while now, and it has been fun. And folks, if you're listening to this, Ricardo and I talk about this movie all the time, so you're just getting a snapshot
Yeah, dude.
of
We
our conversations, because we talk about film, we talk about superhero movies, but we talk about this movie all the time. And whenever we rewatch it, we hit each other up to let each
yeah.
other know, hey, I caught this time. Um, I don't know if you remember, we got to see we watched this movie together once for
Mhm.
sure. And
Yes.
it was on an airplane.
To
As
LA. Yep. Going
Yeah,
to LA.
we
Yep.
took a trip to LA one time, and we watched it together, and we're just riffing back and forth, talking to each other. It took up almost the entire trip, just us watching the movie and talking
Mm,
about the movie. Um, for me, as far as my closing thoughts go, is, just give it another watch. Give it another watch again, and, see if you could pick up some things as far as performances or things that you might not have seen before, um and such, and just appreciate just not only how special The Dark Knight was at the time, but how special it continues to be. I would keep an eye out for when that 15-year anniversary hits in July of 2023, because trust me, the articles are going to come out again about, Heath Ledger's performance, about Christopher Nolan's legacy as a director, about film, about superheroes, about comic book movies, and so on and so forth. But, for me, The Dark Knight is the greatest superhero movie of all time, and it will continue to be the best superhero movie of all time. And I'll be honest with you, it's been 15 years. Here comes another bold statement. I don't know if anything else is going to dethrone it. I've seen
mhm.
some amazing superhero movies since The Dark Knight came out, and I don't want to disrespect any movie or any director. I named a whole bunch of them before. I think Zach did some great stuff with Man of Steel, um, with Zack Snyder's Justice League. I think Patty Jenkins did something great with Wonder Woman. I want to give my respect to Logan. I want to give my respect to The Winter Soldier, to Infinity War, to Endgame, to movies that came out before The Dark Knight, such as
Mhm.
X2, such as Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. You know, um, Deadpool, that was great too. I really like Days of Future Past. That came out after The Dark Knight, and I really liked No Way Home,
Mhm.
Spider-Man No Way Home. Um, but no matter how much, and let's not leave out Spider-Man uh, Into the
Into the
Spider-Verse. Yeah,
Spider-Verse. Oh, yeah.
we don't want to leave that out. Just some animation love, but um, each and every time, it's still The Dark Knight, and it's not even. I don't even have to think about it. So, would you mind leaving us with some closing thoughts, Ricardo?
Yeah, The Dark Knight it's special, and every time I get to rewatch it, I get to appreciate how special it really is. And like I mentioned, there was a time before and there was a time after. I thought it was a great pull that you brought up when Joker says you've changed things forever, because in a way, that's what the film does indeed feel like. That everything changed after this movie. You named some amazing films
Yeah,
that we both enjoy, and other films that I would also consider to be a masterpiece of filmmaking and whatnot. But there's something about the Dark Knight, and it's also about the era, the time in which the movie came out, where we were in our lives when we watched it versus where we are now when we watch it. And as we watch movies, as we grow, perspectives can change. Sometimes movies can, they can wear down a little bit. And then sometimes you get a better appreciation for it. And The Dark Knight is one of those movies that every time I watch it, I get a better appreciation for it. Because we're either finding something new, we're appreciating performances, or we're gonna remember what it was like to be at that time period watching a movie change the game, right? Because like at this point, we've had a lot of great superhero movies that came out after The Dark Knight, but they came out after The Dark Knight, and that's very important. And what I mean is, it's like when the Avengers came out, right? The Avengers came out, it's like, oh my God, the Avengers, like we got them all together. But 3 movies later, we've seen that team up. So even as good as it can be, it's like, oh well, we've kind of seen it, right? We've seen the
Right.
team up movies, so we know, you know what I mean? Like Endgame, Infinity War, they're great, but Avengers was first. So you have that first. And I feel like The Dark Knight has that lightning in a bottle feeling, that like it was the first. It was the one that really cemented the idea that these movies could be more than just what, a general audience person might say is a comic book movie. It could be deeper than that. I feel like this was the first time it also actors, professional actors, also looked at comic book films very differently, where they were like, wait a minute, like wait, these movies can have this much depth and this much layer. I don't think we get a movie like Logan without The Dark Knight.
Right.
I don't think we get a movie like Winter Soldier without The Dark Knight. Like there are movies that I'm like, I don't know if those movies would ever exist without the existence of The Dark Knight, because I think that it set forward a trend that we could look at these things differently, and I'll always appreciate it for that, which is why I think that it will always stand the test of time and people should study it. I always encourage people to watch it. If you've taken time away from it, watch it again. I think the pacing works perfectly for what it is. And I feel like, again, it's one of those movies that changed the game, and not many movies get to do that often, and we don't really get to talk about it. And I think that we are like, we're so lucky. We're so lucky that we got to watch it. We're so lucky we got to see it at release. I look forward to younger generations watching it today, and maybe they'll see something and view it a little bit differently than we did. Because maybe that there's, they got superhero fatigue, or there's so many superheroes and
Right.
whatnot. You know what I mean? But I'm so grateful that we got to watch it when we did. I'm so grateful that, with a filmmaker like Nolan always pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, and taking a character like the Batman, who was pretty
Right.
much dead in the water, and doing something so unique and special with him, and making us believe. And I remember growing up as a kid and watching Superman the movie for the first time, and I remember the tagline, "You will believe a man could fly." And I always hung on to that because it made me believe, and Nolan made me believe that Batman could exist.
Yeah.
And I'll always appreciate that how grounded and real and raw he made those movies. And The Dark Knight, again, cemented that feel for me. He made me believe that this world could exist, and I'll always appreciate that. So, like you, I think that The Dark Knight is the greatest comic book film of all time. I have a hard time believing that we're going to see another film do something as special as The Dark Knight, because again, superhero movies now are a dime a dozen. We see them often. Yeah, we're going to have to wait until someone can change it up again, change the formula, change something to a point where we go, oh, that's really different and unique. But for right now, man, it's The Dark Knight. And for the foreseeable future, it will be The Dark Knight. And that's how I feel about it.
Awesome. Well, folks, that was the official Panel Bros breakdown of The Dark Knight
Oh,
as
yeah.
we continue the filmography of Christopher Nolan. And thank you for listening. This was a special episode for both of us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And now that we're done with The Dark Knight, what's next? Inception. So we're
Inception, baby.
continuing with this amazing filmography from an amazing director. So please stick around. There is more. If you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube at the Panabros, that would be great. As always, your subscribe helps us increase our reach so more people can hear us discuss movies and break down movies and such. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.